Hey everybody, Todd here. I just really wanted to say before this episode that we obviously talk a lot about the subject matter in this movie, but I know a lot of you watch the movie, but a lot of you guys don't as well because, we're going to recap it. This movie deals a lot with someone who has taken their life and the repercussions of that act on their wife and her community around her. So we talk a lot about suicide, and if that is a specific trigger for you, this may be an episode you want to avoid because it is a very big theme in this movie. I think the episode is great. We obviously have a lot of fun, but I just wanted to give a warning to everybody that we do sort of delve into those topics and have some heartfelt conversations around it. So be warned, it is a great episode. So if you can stick with it, awesome. If you can't, totally understandable. That's why we're doing the warning up front. Love you, mean it. Enjoy the episode.
This episode brought to you by the following patrons: Boezy, Jeremy, Ali, Shining Donut 911, Nathan, Jennifer with a PH, Joey, Mr. Rage Bomb, Libby, Sneaky Snake, Wes, Dreskel, Kaylee, Aaron, Danielle, the number Jeff, Amy, Tia, Matthew, Dave, Jonathan, Scott, Kate, Isaac, Karoon, and Nick B. And all the patrons want you to know you're loved, you're listened to, and you're a valuable member of the awesome Horror Virgin community. And if you want to hang out with us, do so in our Facebook group and Discord servers where we hang out and chat daily.
The Night House with an N,
yes,
not a K.
Night House, not a K.
Oh, yeah. That's fair.
It's a reality show. 14 knights competing for the hand of one fair maiden.
Chivalry isn't dead. What's up, Mom?
I didn't come here to maketh friends.
It's called jousting, not friending. Now all I'm picturing is 14 knights competing over Susan Sossaman or whatever the fuck her name was from
Shannon Sossaman.
Whatever.
Oh, the rose ceremony. If they don't get a rose, they just stab the guy next to them.
Oh my God. It's the War of the Roses.
Oh my
shit.
God. I'll call Netflix right now.
That's not the one that's going to take us anymore. We're going to have to go to a different... They're making some cuts.
I'll call Roku right now.
Yes, we're going to go on Freeview and Roku.
The sequel is The Circle, but it's just Stonehenge. Let's go.
It's just about 14 druids trying to figure it out in the English wilderness.
I'm naked under this cloak. I've always has been, and I always will. I don't care what the guys say about it.
I've always
has been, Paige. Spoken like a true druid.
I've only read that rune.
I've only ever read that rune. You fucker. I hate you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Horror Virgin. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm your Horror Virgin Todd, which means I can't read runes, but Mikey makes me read them. And this week, he made me read The Night House.
The Night House.
The Night House. Yeah, so what did you guys think? Well, let me ask this, because this movie came out like 2 years ago. Had you seen it before today?
No, it was my first time.
Yeah, same here.
I only watched it like last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I was like, we should do The Night House. It was pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So since all of our first impressions were pretty recently, what were your first impressions of it?
I super enjoyed the movie.
Okay.
In a lot of different ways. One, I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of cheesy. And then I was like, oh, this is scary. And then it scared the shit out of me over and over again.
Yes.
The first half of it was really like, it ramps up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then from a work perspective, at the end, I was a little, at first, disappointed of like, oh, what happened? And then I was like, wait a minute. As a metaphor, it super works, like nothing being a metaphor for death or suicide or suicidal thoughts, and like wrestling with that, and how, her husband, there's not really an explanation, and, he dies by suicide, and there's a lot of families that search for explanations in like a way that she does, that it can, sometimes it can be very unhealthy and not healing, kind of like what it does with her. And then like she's wrestling with it, and it's kind of like haunting her, but it's always been with her since she had like a near death experience. And like a lot of people use death or dying or suicidal thoughts as it's a coping skill that makes some people feel better when they're going through hard times, of like, I can always escape like that, which I'm not saying it's healthy. I'm just saying that this is something that happens. And this movie does a really good job of unpacking it as a metaphor. And it really ends with her being unhappy, dealing with the depression of the loss of her husband, and like people and families of suicide are way much more likely to die by suicide or attempt suicide.
Yeah.
And her sitting in the boat, struggling with the gun, as the people who do actually care about her. I mean, the movie tries to like throw you some curveballs like, do we care about them? Because like the whole time I was like, her friend fucked her husband. Like I was like, I know it.
You mean the lady from Barry?
Yeah.
That's just like completely your headcanon. There is nothing on the screen to demonstrate that.
I mean, yeah, I think he even acknowledges that he was wrong. He was just assuming that while watching it.
Yeah.
Well, like,
everything else bad happens to her.
yeah, well, at the end when her friend and the neighbor are like getting her out of the canoe and like holding her while she's like just coming to grips with what's going on, like I loved that shot and that scene.
And then he kind of disappears, and then like she kind of sees him and she's like, he's always with you, and it's nothing. And it's like it was a really good metaphor for me for like mental health. And I don't super come out strong like that in our podcast, but like for me, I do a lot with suicide and suicidal thought, suicidal loss, and it really was a real great visual representation of someone struggling with that, the loss of someone, and then going down that road, and like nothing as a metaphor of that. And not to mention, that's just the metaphor. Like the plain movie was like really creepy, like really scared me. And then do you think he really killed those women?
See, okay, I'm torn.
I totally think that was in her head, trying to like justify his suicide. And then like she's gone down this like big rabbit hole, and she's kind of lost her touch with reality.
See, that's my question, because I feel like this movie leaves that unanswered, and it can go one of two ways. And one way I love, and the other way falls apart for me pretty fast. So
yeah. So the fact that I like after I watched this, so that like the day after, like a couple of days after, where I was like thinking about all this, let me know that this was a good movie for me. And when I watched it, I was like, holy fuck, Todd's gonna hate this movie because I am having a hard time with this.
Yeah, it's scary, man. Like, I don't know if it's as scary as His House for me, but His House was more...
His House was scary, too.
Yeah, His House was really scary and very emotional. Like, we did back-to-back, like, fucking very emotional episodes for me, especially because the accident that she describes, her near-death experience, is exactly sort of what I went through with my brother, except he didn't recover, right? He actually passed away, whereas she recovered, right? So, like,
well, her friend did pass away in that wreck.
Oh, well, there you go.
So she's you, basically.
Yeah, she's you, basically.
But she was dead for
like
4 minutes.
Super, way more attractive.
Oh, yeah. She's way hotter than me. But I was thrown from the bed of the truck, but I was virtually unhurt, other than, like, having to get stitches and stuff. Like, I wasn't dead for 4 minutes like she was. But I didn't like the end of this movie, although I really feel like it works for the metaphor better than what like I wanted to happen.
It works more for the metaphor than it does for the surface story.
So like I sort of dig that, because I really do like the metaphorical way they built this story around like what suicide does to both the person who takes their life and also the people around them, like their family, because when that happens, like suicide can run through a community. Like you'll see, not necessarily family members. Sometimes it is, but like
they're called clusters.
Yeah. So like that's very common. And what we're seeing in this movie and what we're seeing play out is like her grapple, like her going down that road. Perhaps she doesn't at the end. I think she decides not to at the end, but it's very clear that the quote unquote nothing is not going to be leaving her alone.
And that's why I went more for the metaphor than the actual monster.
Well, because the monster in this doesn't win. It's like a stalemate at the end of this. Like there is no stamp like we beat the monster at the end of this, because it's very clearly there. It's always going to be there because death is the ever-present force controlling our lives, or eventually going to take our lives. So like I understand that. I just don't feel like there's like we overcame something that I normally like in movies.
Well, in the lens of the metaphor, for me it all works way better than the surface level, because in the metaphor,
because she does overcome the desire to want to take her own life. Yeah,
like the gesture, the suicidal crisis.
Agreed.
Her loved ones are there. I mean, she's obviously going to have to get help after that. They're not going to leave her alone. And like their friends were leaving. We're like, I was like screaming at people. I'm like, okay, because like I think the bar scene also does really well for me from like my angle of like mental health of like, she's kind of talking about it, and one guy asked one question, but like everyone's super uncomfortable dealing with this.
Oh yeah.
Everyone can't talk. They can't sit in that. They can't hold space with her.
I recognize a lot of conversations I had around the time my brother died and I went back to high school. Like the conversation she has with the student's parent that comes in.
Yeah.
And,
I kind of loved that.
I love that one too.
Sort of me too, but like the way she's like using humor in that scene to like
Yeah.
explain what happened, but also not necessarily be a bitch, but like, stop, leave me alone. Like, I'm going
Right.
through a lot.
To
Like,
deal. She's using humor to deal.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
is something that people do.
So I recognized a lot of that in me because when I went back to school, and I talked about this last week too, because they're like, both movies are very similar themes. Going back to school, and like people who didn't really weren't really friends with my brother Logan, like, would ask me, hey, where's your brother been? And I'd have to be like, oh yeah, he died this summer. So
Yeah.
you would always like try and make a joke of it. And then of course those people would just like avoid you for the rest of the year because they didn't want to like have to talk to you about it again. It was weird.
Yeah, and Todd, you could speak to I mean, I can speak this from like the helper angle, and I've been through some trauma and stuff, but like you can speak to it as like the things you've been through. But like, you know, people ask me like, well, how can I be there for this person who like either had someone die by suicide or had a traumatic loss? I'm like, generally, you're not their therapist. They just want to feel human. Like generally you stay around people who are going through stuff, at least in the same house. Like give them some space if they want space, but like sit there, go eat with them, like watch TV, like act normal. And then if they want to talk about it, feel comfortable talking about it with them. But really, it's like being there for somebody is like 80% of the battle is just showing up, being authentic, being yourself. And if they want to talk about it with you, they talk about it. But if not, they're going to really be thankful that someone was there and treated them like a human.
Yeah, so like when it happened, my dad would like for, I don't know, years afterwards, he'd be like, hey, let's talk. I would be like, I don't really want to talk. He's like, well, we don't have to talk about it. Let's just talk about whatever, about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, let's go to Las Palmas. So it's like a terrible Mexican place that I fucking love. It's delicious. But like, it's not even real Mexican food. But I love it.
First off, it's an award-winning Mexican restaurant.
I don't believe it. I'm like, your state's so many states away from Mexico. Like,
it has tortillas and cheese and meats.
I mean, that is the cornerstone of a lot of Mexican food.
Yeah, but Paige, if you ever came here, I would of course make you eat Las Palmas because it is a staple of
Why would you do that?
Nashville. But because it's not great. It is like bad Tex-Mex, but I love it.
I show up and it's just a pizza place.
I take her to Hot Chicken. I'd be like, let's kill your asshole.
Oh, I'm down. Let's do that.
So like the majority of the time, my dad and I wouldn't talk about like the sadness that was pervasive in our life at the time. It was just, he was there for me and wanted to talk, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean like maybe 8% of the time we talked about it. The rest of the time we were just bullshitting about whatever.
Generally, if it gets bad, you can force it.
Yeah.
Like with this girl, you'd have to force it at some point. Like, hey, I don't feel comfortable leaving you alone at this house. You're going through a hard time. Like if Todd, if you were acting like her for like at all, I'd be like, hey bro, I'm not gonna leave because you're not doing well. We're gonna order a pizza and I'm gonna sleep down here because you're like, this is not. And like, we don't have to talk about it, but like,
yeah,
you're kind of fucked up right now.
And that's what I mean. Like just showing up and being around that person.
Yeah. Because her friend would be like, are you sure you don't want me to stay? She's like, nah, don't worry about it. She's like, all right, peace.
Yeah.
I have showed up to somebody's house one time with a bag of McDonald's and was like, do you want to eat these fries? Because if not, I'm going to sit here and eat these nuggets while you cry and I'm not leaving till I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal with it.
I remember when I was a kid, McDonald's would do like, I don't know, 39-cent cheeseburger day on Wednesday.
I remember that. It was Tuesdays. It was Tuesdays.
Yeah. Oh, and that's right. Because Monday was the cheaper hamburger day.
Yeah, yeah. But like, what asshole wants a hamburger without cheese on it?
I don't understand those
Vegans.
people.
They can't eat the hamburger. That's what I'm saying, Paige.
I
know, right? My dad would literally, he would pick us up from school and take us to McDonald's. We'd get like 50 cheeseburgers and eat them for like 3 days.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
I mean, we were poor and it worked.
Bro, there were some very unhealthy fast food habits I picked up in high school. And like fast food was better back then. And I don't want to sound like an old man, but before Dave died, Wendy's was like the shit.
Wendy's has taken a bit of a dip. I feel you.
And you could get a 99-cent double stack, which was like it was like bigger than a Whopper. I'd be like, yeah, just give me like 7 of those.
Back when you could smoke at a Wendy's, that shit was lit.
When they had a salad bar.
Fuck, I forgot Wendy's had a salad bar when I was
I think we're really class representative because like Todd was like really poor and I was like middle class and like Paige was like fucking loaded.
Yeah.
No, we were very poor until I was like 13.
We were very poor until I knew what money was.
yeah. 13's very young.
No, I mean like dirt ass poor, like hole in the bottom of our car poor.
You know, her dad just loaded them all up on the wagon. They went out west after they hit black gold on their farm.
Black gold? You mean oil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what show I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Beverly Hillbillies. But like, I didn't grow up in Southern California. Anyway.
I know you grew up in like Palo Alto, California.
No, I did not. Oh God, I wish. Like, I even at our most comfortable, we couldn't even spit near Palo Alto. That's like a wild level of rich that we'll never attain.
Meanwhile, people are moving from hovels in Paige's neighborhood when she was a kid and buying houses cash in Nashville.
I know.
They're like, look at this village of poors.
but that's the thing. It's like, it's all relative because it's like your quality of life is so terrible, but you have an amount of money that would make other people like violently jealous for your terrible life. Anyway. This movie.
Yeah, what's your first impression?
So I am torn because I really loved this movie until the end. And then it all starts to fall apart for me unless it's all in her head. Because if he's not a murderer, if she has made all of this up to justify a reason for herself, then it fits with the metaphor for me, and I think it works a lot better story-wise. I think we're missing one scene to make that work, and that is like the Tale of Two Sisters scene where someone else comes in and there are no bodies and there is no anything and the mirror's not broken and it is literally all in her head.
Right, but we see the mirror is broken and we never see that the bodies actually aren't in the reverse house. So in my mind, they are there. Her boyfriend was killing people, which is bonkers. And I also did not like that aspect of it too, Paige. But yes, I completely agree.
Because for me, I'm like, because if it's all in her head, I'm like, this makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
Of course you would have crazy delusions like this. Like, of course you would try to search for an answer, and any answer is better than no answer. So like, I understand every motivation for that. I understand it being in her head. It seems like at the end of the movie, she gets the help she needs. And I really thought that's kind of where we were going to end up with it.
Yeah.
But then her friend shows up and sees the mirror. And I'm like, no, it did happen.
Well, I think she could have crashed her head in the mirror.
She could have.
You think she Fight Clubbed herself?
She may have.
I mean, honestly, if she had, I wish they had shown that later on as like a reveal, so we know it was in her head.
I think they intentionally ended it like that to be ambiguous.
But here's the thing, though. The ambiguity ruins it for me.
Same.
Because it makes the metaphor make sense, but it doesn't make her story make sense. Because at a certain point, I'm like, either one of two things. She enters some very serious therapy, and we do find out that all of it's made up and it's all in her head. Great. That's something we can explore and treat and process and work on. Or option B, her husband was a fucking serial killer, and we have not even scratched the surface of it in this movie. We're not even going to talk about it. She never reports the bodies. Like, she doesn't call anybody about it. Like, those women are just fucking missing, and that girl in the bookstore was a near-ass miss.
Yeah.
And this movie has a kind of weird perspective on it where it almost portrays it as romantic, that he is killing other people instead, and I really struggle with that unless it's all in her head, because if it's all in her head, then you can look at that as, well, that's a very toxic, upsetting way to think, but that is something that someone might justify to themselves in a desperate state.
That's what I took it all as. I think he was cheating on her repeatedly.
Maybe. Yeah, that's possible.
And I think she just could not
wrap her head around that.
Yeah, and like,
but then how do you explain the bookstore girl? Unless she's such an unreliable narrator that we cannot even trust what other characters say around her.
Oh, I think he choked the bookstore girl.
I think he did too.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
In a way that he thought she might be into it.
Yeah.
Some people like it. Just, that's not important. But like
he kidnapped her for 365 days, and about 18 days in, they're taking a shower together, and she tries to leave. And then he like fist palms the back of her neck to bring her back in the shower. Like that kind of choking, Paige.
I'm so glad you watched it too, Tom.
Honestly, Paige, I've watched it twice.
It's so crazy. You gotta watch the second one.
I've seen it. I'm the one who told you guys to watch it.
No, the second one. You gotta watch the second one.
I've seen the second one.
The second one is fucking madness.
Mikey, set up a TV outside by your adult-sized kiddie pool.
I have a projector.
You cannot watch that in public where people might see it.
Disagree. He has a fenced-in backyard and a flat surface against his house. We can watch 365 in his pool.
I think it's a little weird to watch that with just one man in a tub in my house.
It's definitely porn. You can't even argue that it's not.
First off, never refer to your pool as a tub again, or I'm not getting in it.
What is a pool if not a giant tub?
I don't know, but if you missed, I guess if you're not in the Romancing the Pod group, you might not know that I live tweeted watching both 365 Part 1 and Part 2. And the second one has a lot less sex in it and a lot more bonkers mafia infighting that makes no goddamn sense. And it just switches languages willy-nilly, where it's like Italian, Polish, who knows. But all of them are better than the English, which is indescribable. Like, I wish it had just all been in Italian or Polish and I could have just read subtitles because the English was honestly worse.
Oh, yeah. It's a struggle, much like a lot of the sex scenes in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, but I mean, what I think is Bookstore Girl gives a description of a series of events that either A, could be that he was maybe cheating on her and then felt guilty and stopped, which is why she says, you know, I'm sure he felt guilty about cheating on you. And then Beth is like, yeah, I'm sure that's what he felt guilty about. Because Beth has already started on the serial killer track.
Yeah.
Or she's an escaped victim or like potential victim, and he just narrowly did not kill her. And the question is, which one do you believe? And I think the movie makes it kind of murky, and maybe he was cheating on her. Maybe he was also killing these women. I think it is really unusual. And the movie just kind of paint it as, because he seems to seek out people that look like her.
Yeah.
Which made it like a very Bundy-ish kind of.
I mean, he has a type.
It's very Christian Grey of him.
I think I'm surprised you're cutting into this because I thought, Paige, if a man approached you and was like, listen, I have very dark urges. I have built a reverse house to trap the demon and I need to have rough sex in it and I need to tie you up. You'd be like,
I'd be like, sir, this is a public bus. Please step away.
You just pull that little string and be like, stop the bus. We gotta
my
go.
Stop. Please let me up.
Please, we have to get to his reverse house so he can put his sex jeans on and show me that dick neck.
No, see, if it's a reverse house, it's a sex shirt. It's a denim sex shirt in the reverse
Ducks
house.
It or Donald Ducks it where he's got like just a shirt
Yeah, you Winnie
on.
the Pooh's it. Yeah, it's the
Hell
reverse
yeah.
house.
Feathers everywhere when you're done.
And you always have to do it doggy style in the reverse house.
Yep.
And all the song that plays is that Missy Elliott song. You can't reverse it.
I'm sorry, was that supposed to be Missy Elliott?
Put my thing down, flip it, and reverse it. Yeah, no, yeah. Okay. No, please stop.
I don't know if you guys know this, but we actually did get Missy Elliott on the podcast today. So
I will say, I think my brain was leaning more towards him being a serial killer because I had just watched him a few weeks ago in Archive 81, where he was like a bad guy. And I was like, I don't trust him. But also something that I love that they do in this movie, and I'll burn a fun fact, it's almost all practical effects.
Oh,
so what this
cool.
movie does a lot is plays with depth of field to create the appearance that like someone is standing somewhere, like a shadow person.
it's so good and so scary.
And then as she moves, you realize that it's just the angle of the camera and the way that it's so fucking good.
It is.
It's really great. I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, the story falls apart because of that ambiguity, and it serves the metaphor, but not the story.
Right.
We're not going to do it anytime soon, but I do want to do an episode of Romancing the Pod on 365 because it's so fucking nuts.
Paige, I'll pick it if you
Why
don't.
do you think
Like,
I watched it? I was keeping that in my pocket. I think I ruined it.
It shocks me that because you are so squeamish about 50 Shades and 50 Shades compared to 365, it makes 50 Shades look tame.
It looks like 50 Shades was directed by Kirk Cameron.
Okay, let's talk about this. I like my porn to be porn and my movies to be movies.
That answers no questions, but
No further questions. I rest the case, Your Honor.
there's no case to be rested.
First off, neither of us are judges.
No, 360. I do think 365. The reason it is the way it is, in part, because it's fan fiction based on 50 Shades, which I found out, and that's hilarious. But also, places outside the United States have a much different attitude toward nudity and displays of nudity on screen than we do, and so I think that's what we're seeing is like 50 Shades is tempered for an American audience. So the Americans are very titillated by it. And everyone else is like, this just looks like a normal movie. And then 365 is like their 50 Shades to be like, holy shit, they really, damn, okay.
My 50 Shades is taking 8 women, trapping them in a statue to confuse a demon to save my wife because I'm a hopeless romantic.
You mean, when you say taking 8 women, you mean murdering 8
Murdering.
women? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in love with my wife.
The movie left it ambiguous. I'm sorry if I love my wife enough to murder 8 women.
All right, let's just jump into the movie so we can talk about it scene by scene, because clearly we've got some stuff to hash out.
Should I ask my husband how many people he would murder for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
If a demon was telling you to murder me, how many women would you murder to trick that demon and keep me alive?
There's a lot of weird rationalization in this movie. It would be my luck to be the neighbor where I'm like walking my dog and I'm like, oh no, neighbor, you cheating on your wife in a house you built on the other side of the lake? This is my hiking path.
I could see that being you. You're like a compassionate person and you have a dog you hate but would probably have to walk around a path that involves a lake. So yeah, I could see that being you.
I just feel bad for that guy. I mean, like, having your neighbor being like, don't tell my wife I'm cheating on her. And you're like, oh, we're not close. And also
no, I like her better than you. What? No.
Yeah.
Oh, I can guarantee you if they had a kid, Mikey would absolutely tell her and be like, listen, if you need a place to stay, you can live with me for the rest of your life.
I'm going to catch me a single mom. I'm going to catch me one.
Mikey is single mothers.
Oh, God.
Single moms out there, we'll be doing a new show where you'll be dressed as a knight.
No.
And Mikey is dressed as Sharon Sossaman or whatever the fuck.
Shannon Sossaman.
Well, I don't care what her real name is. Like,
I don't know.
the only thing I disliked about this movie was that death really gave me like abusive ex-boyfriend vibes.
Yeah, I was like, this is the weirdest Final Destination movie I've ever seen.
Although this works better than Final Destination because
I
at least there
100%
is like
agree.
a villain. Like you actually get to see, quote unquote, I guess they call it nothing, but death. You get to see death, right?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, it's Death. We hooked up in college, and like I just was like wondering where you're at right now. Like,
Have you been thinking of me this whole time?
You remember that time you died for 4 minutes and didn't ghost me? Well, here's the deal. I need more of that in my life, so I need you to not ghost me, actually become a ghost, and like live with me in the nothing forever.
Hey, it's me, Death. You up?
There's the truth out there, friends. I've had a lot of 4-minute encounters that have turned into lifelong obsessions.
4 minutes?
For them.
You expect people to compete for 4 minutes?
4 minutes is a long time. Try planking for 4 minutes.
I can, but that's only because my tits are about as long as my arms.
What kind of Tyrannosaurus Rex are you?
Mikey, it's Titranosaurus Rex. Thank you very much.
That t-shirt's coming. I want Paige as a
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
If you guys want to come up with a design for the Titranosaurus Rex.
Just a dinosaur with huge cans.
She puts the ass in Jurassic Park.
All right, can we please get into this movie so we can talk about it?
Okay, fine.
But after, I need to scream about 365 some more after we're done recording.
Okay.
Well, save it for an episode.
So this movie opens with some shots of basically the boat at the dock, the wind chime, the house, and it does seem kind of empty. One of the challenges with this movie is that it really kind of relies on knowing where you're at in the house, and it doesn't establish the house great.
Yeah.
Because multiple times I found myself thinking like, well, where is she now?
Yeah,
Like,
is she upstairs? Is she on the main floor? Is she in the basement
she in the
level?
basement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had that same problem too, Paige.
yeah. But we do, from kind of looking at the house, clearly whoever else lived there was an architect. And we watch as she comes home from clearly the funeral, because she's like dressed in black. She's holding a casserole.
I do love that they included the casserole because like when Logan died, like
so many
people made us food for like we had food for months. Like we had to throw some of it away. And I also love that she comes in with the casserole and then like sits there for a second, and then like just swipes the whole casserole dish into the trash.
I do, but then I like that she retrieves it later. We don't see her do it, but we see her eating that casserole on the couch. But essentially, she like grabs a bottle of whiskey from the basement. She sits down and she's watching home movies, eating that casserole, and then she goes to bed. And it's very it's super sad. The beginning of this movie is very sad.
So's the middle and the end.
Yeah.
This whole movie is sad, Paige.
It really could have used a giant shower and a lawn mowing robot named George.
Oh my God, that's like my rich people dreams.
Oh, the second 365, they run across the lawn, across an automated lawnmower that's doing its own thing, and they jump over it to like get to their car, and they're like, sorry, George, to the robot, and then we never hear about it again. And then later they're like, we have a gardener, and I'm like, what happened to the robot? Anyway, we can't get into it. So she's kind of like feeling the pillow and his side of the bed.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking about like, if Jake was suddenly gone, how many things would smell like him? That's what I kept like fixating on, of like, it would be inescapable.
Yeah, he's very smelly.
No, just like,
He smells like sawdust in heaven, Mikey.
I'm sorry, lonely person, but like when somebody lives in your house all the time,
That smells like shit.
he smells fantastic. Actually,
I know, he
but,
smells like sawdust in heaven. I said it first.
Sawdust in Heaven is my favorite single. It's a great song.
Isn't it by Florida Georgia Line?
I don't know. So we have an answer to how many people he would kill. I asked,
Oh, yeah?
if a demon was telling you to kill me, how many people would you kill to trick the demon and keep me alive? And he says, I would have you 5150 me.
So he's going to kill 5,051 people, Paige?
No, I think he's just going to kill our insurance deductible.
No, I know what 5150 is, but Mikey, do you want to explain it?
It's the involuntary commitment
Oh,
law.
I guess that's right.
California.
That's only the code for California. That's
It's
involuntary
6404
committing.
in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Baker Act in Florida. Baker
Yeah.
Act is like, everybody says, you got Baker Act. I'm like, that's a Florida thing.
Yeah.
That's the only right to say. I mean,
That is the right answer.
Yeah. If your spouse ever comes to you and says, I need to murder some people to keep the demon away from you because it wants you back on the other side dead, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and red is a signifying color because it either means like evil, demon, whatever, or spicy. And either way, you gotta be wary.
Spicy.
Spicy. Like later, there's like a regular moon and a spicy moon. So
That's a one of spicy moon.
that's what a spicy moon of all. Anyway, so she's sleeping. She's kind of like sad about his side of the bed. But one thing I did notice, and I noticed this a couple times in this movie, she has all her windows open, and you can tell that they're open because there's like a breeze, but she lives right next to a lake.
So many mosquitoes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was like, mosquito central. This bitch is going to be covered. Like, oh.
Yeah, where does this movie take place? Do you ever find out?
Upstate New York.
Oh, yeah. So there would be a shitload of mosquitoes.
Shitload of mosquitoes.
Yeah, that's a no from me, dog.
Hard pass. And there's no screens on the windows either. I was just like, what the fuck?
That's an architectural choice her husband made.
I guess.
That's how you know he was a murderer.
He was like,
I'm going to kill you with Lyme disease.
yeah, I'm an architect and I specialize in giving people Zika. Like, what is happening?
Screens make the house take away from my vision or whatever. And I would just be like, ugh. Why don't you go build a reverse house? Did the reverse house have screens?
I know. Well, it didn't even have windows yet.
Ugh.
It was barely a house. This is more of a reverse shack.
Enjoy West Nile virus, you idiot.
And bats, because if you got a ton of mosquitoes, it means you also got bats. And bats can also fly through like open windows.
So could chickens could get in there.
Chickens?
With squirrels.
Well, that's a second story window, man. Squirrels, though, definitely.
But she had the first floor. It had to be open too.
I mean, maybe.
I honestly wouldn't mind chickens as much as I would mind bats and mosquitoes.
I mean, I love bats. Bats are one of my favorite animals, but they shouldn't be in my house. That's
Yeah.
not where they belong. Anyway. So there's a knock at the door. She gets up. She goes downstairs. There's nobody there, really. And she checks all the doors, makes sure they're locked. She goes through the back slider. She goes to the basement, and nobody's really there, except as she kind of moves past the basement door, it seems to open. And as it crosses the other door, it seems to reveal a shadow person that turns to look at her. But then as she shuts the door, it disappears because the depth of field changes.
So cool.
It's so fucking cool.
But it's also scary.
It is scary, and as I was watching it, I felt like they must have been doing it more places and I wasn't seeing it every time because it is very subtle. And then at the end of the movie, as it ramps up, you see it everywhere. But I feel like if I were to go back and watch this again super close, specifically looking for it, I would probably find even more of them. But anyway, she wakes up on the floor of the office downstairs. She gets up, gets her coffee, leaves the house. And as she's walking to her car, she realizes that the gate to their dock is open. So she closes it, but she sees muddy footprints along the dock leading up from the water.
Yeah. The thing is, she actually doesn't close it. So I guess there's
she just clips it into place.
Yeah, so it's like a little latch that holds it open, or I'm assuming there's also a latch that holds it closed, but we never see it because she never uses that one. She pushes it towards the latch that holds it open, but it was like swinging in the wind. I don't know. I thought that was weird that it had a latch that held it open, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I've never owned a dock, so I don't know. I would assume that if you're on a body of water that could have storms, you might have closures on both sides so that it doesn't swing and break. Because I imagine that the more it swings, the more it has a possibility to break.
That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah, that makes complete sense, Paige. Yeah.
Anyway, so she rushes to work, and it turns out she's a teacher, and she's there for like an end of the year meeting where they're turning in grades.
Which means her husband was rich as shit. Because we don't pay teachers enough.
He's an architect.
Yeah, and he built that house.
Yeah, but we don't pay teachers enough to like live at the lake like that.
I definitely thought he had an air of came from money.
Oh, yeah, like that sort of white privilege where you feel like you can get away with murdering 8 women. Yeah, I definitely feel like that was a part of this movie. Yeah.
He did it because he loved her. It's romance.
Oh, no.
I don't.
I think here's my headcanon. They've been married for almost 15 years.
What?
Yes, it says in the movie. They had been married for almost 15 years.
They got married at 15?
No, she's in her late 30s, early 40s.
Okay.
So
people our age did do that. Some of them.
Yeah. My headcanon was she married him right out of college. And so they were together when he was dirt poor, becoming an architect, and he's had 15 years to then build them this house, and the house is only a couple years old, was my headcanon. They'd lived there for 2 years.
Okay.
And that's kind of verified by some of the movies and stuff that she watches later.
Okay, cool.
So my headcanon was she got in on the ground floor of him being a really good architect, and he made a ton of money and then basically built their house as like a passion project.
Yeah. I mean, cool. I mean, that sounds very similar to me as a movie we've done on Romancing the Pod.
The Lake House?
Yes, The Lake House.
This is just scary, The Lake House.
Yes, it is. And I honestly could have used a lot more of Keanu Reeves with his dick in their mailbox.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, where should he put his dick in this one? The reverse house? The mailbox? Like, where does it go? Is there a magical time-traveling dog lord?
Oh, the neighbor's dog, maybe.
I have a question. If you're going to like move in by a lake and like live out there, you have to get a dog.
Why do you have to have a dog?
You're like out in nature. You need a dog.
I mean, I would certainly get a dog, but there are people who are like allergic to dogs or culturally don't necessarily like dogs. So like, they don't have to get a dog.
I'm just saying, if you want to deter burglars and are like a kind of person who leaves all your windows open, you need a dog.
First of all, I never leave my windows open. See my earlier comments about bugs. Secondly, I'm way more likely to be burgled in my tiny 1-bedroom Los Angeles apartment than I would ever be out in nature. Thirdly, if I lived in the woods, I might have a dog to alert me to other animals.
Mm-hmm.
But on the lake where there's a bunch of other houses, it doesn't make as much sense to me.
And they can swim in the water.
Dogs can swim. That's good, Mikey.
Doggies swim.
Yeah.
Cows go moo.
Oh, I would definitely get a cow. I'm not going to lie. If I moved to the lake, I'm getting a cow. But like one of those Scottish cows that have like bangs.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to name him like Emo.
Emo Scottish cows.
Yeah. And just blast fucking Panic at the Cow Disco.
100% of the people at this lake who did not own dogs killed a bunch of people.
Wait, I missed all of that because in my mind I was screaming, I chimed in with a haven't you heifers ever heard of closing
drinking
the
goddamn milk. No.
So like, sorry, I couldn't understand what you were saying because my brain was sabotaging me.
I said 100% of the people on this lake who don't own dogs killed people.
You don't know that there aren't other people that don't own dogs.
The movie did not show us that, Paige.
But that's what you're saying. 100% of the people who don't own dogs killed people, and I'm like,
on that lake.
Because you only see 2 people that live on that lake. So technically 50%.
You say that guy's 50%?
I mean, he's one of the 2 people that
2
live
people
there.
that live there.
There were 3 people who lived there. And his wife.
When this movie picks up, there are only 2 people that we know live on that lake. That is her neighbor and her.
And one of them killed people and one of them didn't.
None of those 2 people killed people when the movie starts.
Also, dogs really do protect you from demons. It's like well-known fact.
What kind of demons are we talking? Is this like Billy Zane kind of demons? Because like,
how much is Big Dog paying you right now? I refuse to believe you have not been approached by Dog Corp.
No, just Big Dog, like the T-shirts, like Big Dog fight demons.
Get off the porch, Todd. What is it? Something about porch.
They're all crazy.
Yeah, if you can't run with Big Dog, you stay on the porch, Todd.
These are terrible. This one says, I'm not a control freak. You just need to do it my way. There's not even a dog pun in that. These shirts are just like lazy.
They just have like a big dog on them and they're just like conservative talking point. It's just like with a dog.
Nobody wants to work anymore. Can't hang with the big dogs.
It really is just like, I love my wife, but she shouldn't be able to vote. Big dog shirts. Like that's the vibe of all the shirts.
Well, that shirt is actually if you married a felon.
Yeah. If you married a guy like who was born in September, who loves to be a jackhammer road worker operator, I'm like fiercely protective of my wife and very insecure, but I love her. It's that like crazy paragraph shirt.
I think the most important thing that you just said that ties back to Big Dog shirts is people that wear them are very insecure, and that is very clear. But they also probably have a gun on them.
But you know what they don't have? Sleeves. Every Big Dog shirt is meant to immediately have the sleeves removed.
Sun's out, both literal and metaphorical. Guns out, Paige.
Yeah, indeed.
I know there's one person turning off the podcast right now and like taking off his Big Dog
like,
shirt.
I love Big
Damn
Dog
liberal
shirt.
bullshit.
I mean, that's how you should count like vaguely people who sound like that. Just be like, that guy has like real Big Dog energy.
Yeah.
It just makes me think of Dog the Bounty Hunter, which also he has Big Dog energy. Like that's Big Dog energy incarnate is Dog the Bounty Hunter.
They call it Big Dog Little Dick energy.
I mean,
My wife is going to be hunted by a demon. I'll murder 8 people. If you want to hang with the big dog, stay on the porch.
But he just choked them. He just choked them all out. Also, he was having sex with them too, right? Like we saw that.
Who's to say?
You know what collar controls big dogs best?
A hand?
A choke collar.
Oh no!
Don't get choke collars. That's so mean.
It's really mean to dogs. Don't do that.
Pinched collars are necessary if you have maybe a large animal that could be out of control in a public situation. You don't want, say, your 90-pound lab to knock over a 3-year-old and have her dad be like mad at you and you have to run to your car. This is not a specific example.
Did you make it back to your car in time, Mikey?
Hell yeah, that guy did.
Good Lord.
If that little 3-year-old wanted to hang with the big dog, she should have not stayed on the porch.
So she's a teacher, as we established. So she's at this like end of the year school meeting where she's turning in her grades.
Yeah.
And we see her kind of closing down her classroom for the end of the year. She falls asleep at her desk, and one of her students' moms comes in and is like, well, my kid didn't have time to do this assignment, and then you were absent on the day he was trying to make it up. And she's trying to like guilt trip her into changing her son's grade.
She's like, he didn't come to me about that until the last day of school. Also, she teaches speech.
My mom's a teacher. And so many kids, like the last week of school, are like, can I turn in like 15 of these like redone assignments for a better grade? And she's like, look, I don't have infinite amount of hours to correct your work. Like if you'd come to me 2-3 weeks ago, like whole different story, but you didn't do work all semester and now you expect a B?
Yeah. Maybe some people can't use Google calendars.
I like how when Mikey makes jokes that are just for Paige and I, but that was funny because Mikey doesn't know how to use Google Calendar and it leads to a lot of scheduling problems.
I used Outlook.
I have Outlook at work,
What
too.
are you, 87?
It's
Sorry.
just because we're forced to by our offices. Yeah, I hate Outlook.
What are your offices, 87?
Yes.
Paige, I think you would really like Office because its full name is actually Office 365 and it will kidnap you.
I'm being strangled sexually by these emails.
I just need someone to Photoshop Clippy, like choking Paige slightly, and then like a little pop-up box that says, "Do you need help being choked?"
You really excel at being a good girl.
Hell yeah.
It looks like you're trying to have an orgasm. That's what I should say.
Would you like some assistance?
Would you like some
That's my
assistance?
best pickup line.
Yeah.
Call me Clitty.
Instead of Clippy. I get it. I love it. Yeah.
Clitty? Yeah. I can never find him when I want it. It's that fucking Clitty. I don't know how to add a column to this spreadsheet.
Oh, dear God. We have to move on.
I'm waiting on Paige. She does that whole thing.
See, I like how earlier you're like, I could do the outline one time. And
I
was
didn't
like,
do this one. If you tell me to do I'll do a movie outline. We'll do it for April Fools.
He says in May.
Mine's gonna be like pause for applause and laughter. I wrote this outline like I was accepting a Golden Globe.
We're podcasting,
no.
so I guess it would be like a Webby.
yeah, I guess. Although you submit for Webbies, like you
Oh, yeah.
nominate yourself.
Webbies are a scam. Like if you ever see someone bragging about winning a Webby, just realize that they paid $3,000 for a trophy. And that's it.
You still have to get votes, like, so it's not a complete scam, but you have to pay to submit to be considered for a Webby. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then it's like a vote, right? So like you have to campaign for it. Yeah, so it's like
Any other award show.
probably, but it's why I hate award shows.
You pay money, you campaign, and then you gotta get the votes. That's fine.
I was recording at the Funhouse offices. This is like 6 months ago. And we were like sitting at one of the it was like a diner set for a podcast we were recording. And there was what looked to be a fake Webby sitting on the table. And I was like, oh my God, how hilarious. You guys put a fake Webby on the set. And they're like, no, that's a real Webby. And I was like, it is plastic.
Yeah, you literally pay like $3,000 for a plastic piece of shit trophy.
Yeah, I was like holding it. I was like, I'm holding a Webby right now.
It's not like the awards I get, from the mayor.
Yeah, the ones that are like glass and etched.
It was pretty nice. But also, I felt like a total asshole getting an award from the mayor and the chief of fire department because of they're like, here's our civilian awards. And they're like, these two guys from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, they rode up on this car wreck. The guy's legs were in his car. His body was 40 yards away. They tourniqueted his legs. They saved his life. Next up, Michael Randolph. His trainings were pretty good.
I'm very worried about the guy you just described whose torso was 40 feet away from his legs.
They saved his life. Those two guys got an award. And I was like, well, my thing is not going to hold up to their thing. Like, that's like a real thing.
Mikey, you winning that award after those guys won the award would be like you winning an award for like what you do every day, and then us winning an award for making a joke about Clippy actually being called Clitty and like helping people have orgasms. Like that is the level of disparity between those two things. I wish you could
hear their stories. It was like they were drowning and they threw him a rope and pulled him out of the river. And they're like, Michael, he came and did an in-service, how to talk to people in a crisis. And we found it pretty helpful. And
he showed us a bunch of weird slides. So along with this trophy, we're giving him a book on how to do PowerPoint better.
No!
Slideology. Yeah. The book is just like one page and it says on the last page of your slide, put Finn.
I need to start doing that. If I could be my authentic self at work, I would have a training video that was filmed in Old West style, silent film style with just silent, the silent film soundtrack of just the piano.
Like early Buster Keaton shit. Yeah. And
then the words of being, and then just people officers approaching someone pointing, and I'd be like, use a soft tone of voice and don't point. And then it's just I'm just narrating a silent film on how to talk to people during a mental health crisis.
I love this.
It's very cerebral, but I just don't know if they're ready for that.
I don't know, but you could maybe enter it for a Webby.
And as long as you paid $3,000, Mikey, you'd win the Webby for Best Silent Film Police Training Video on How to De-Escalate Situations.
Get that plastic spring.
We're going to get so many upset emails from people who paid a shitload of money for their trophy collection.
Yes, if we get a bunch of emails from famous Webby people, I'd be like, well, why don't you come on the show and talk about it?
Guys, if you want to pay $3,000 for a shitty trophy, I will make those for you, and they'll say whatever you want it to say.
Regardless, back to this movie.
Yeah.
So a parent comes in, they're just like, man, my kid. And so she's just like, fine, he gets a B. And she's like, well, that's not really why I'm here. And she's like, why the fuck are you here? Like, what did you want?
I did sort of love that.
And she's like, well, you weren't there. And he's like, yeah, my husband shot himself in the face. That's why I wasn't there. It's personal. Do you feel better now? And I was just like, yes.
Yeah, get it.
It was really fun. I was like, I hope she feels bad.
She does, though. You can clearly see her like, oh, fuck. Like, I wish I hadn't said anything.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
Anyway, we cut back to the house where she's unloading boxes. She's clearly going to start packing up his stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thing that, like, watching her pack up his stuff just made me think of, like, if I had to do this, like, if this happened to me and I had to go through the whole process of like packing up all the stuff and going through it, I'm like, that's the part that would get me.
Oh, it is.
That's the part that would fuck me up.
It absolutely is the part that fucks you up. Like when we were cleaning up like Logan's stuff and throwing away his clothes, or we actually donated his clothes, but like a lot of that stuff, like,
yeah,
that's harder than the funeral because you're literally packing them up and removing them from your life.
Yeah.
And it's like so sad. Like, I still remember those moments.
I have never been able to grieve properly at funerals. I don't know if it's a vulnerability thing or I'm just uncomfortable publicly grieving.
For me, it's a vulnerability thing. I know it is, but I'm the same way.
I'm just not one to like, I don't get a lot of like being in a group and crying. Like that doesn't make me feel comfortable. And like, I'm more of like a personal, like talk one-on-one about it kind of person. And then like, it's definitely afterward, like what you're talking about, where I like feel stuff. And I always feel I have to like be taking care of other people. Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also something to be said for like, if someone has been ill for a long time or is older and you've had time to kind of process and prepare yourself for them to move on from your life, I think that's a little bit different of an experience. And that's why people start giving stuff away while people are still alive and stuff.
Yeah, I can see that.
But to have someone just suddenly removed and then have to pack up their stuff from your life, that sounds horrible. Watching her do it in this movie, I was just like, oh my God, like this is brutal.
It's very, very sad.
And it is worth noting in this movie that whenever she encounters a part of that grieving process that is extremely difficult, that is when the dreams and the delusions rear their ugly head.
Yeah.
I think that really lends itself to an interpretation that all of this is in her head. The movie just never definitively tells us that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't sleep. If you can't sleep, you will start to be delusional and hallucinate after a few days.
Oh, absolutely. So once she comes home she's kind of unloading the boxes, she runs into her neighbor, and this is where he tells her he's going to cover the boat.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a storm. And she asks if he heard a gunshot that morning, because she heard one as she was trying to like close the gate.
And that gunshot at the very beginning scared the shit out of me. I was like, oh!
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so loud out of nowhere. I fucking hated it.
Well, and we notice now that she's talking to the neighbor, the muddy footprints from the dock are gone.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, too. A lot of the things that she is seeing, the footprints, the evidence that someone is there haunting her, air quotes, disappear when other people are around.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
another thing to kind of suggest that, like, oh, maybe this is in her head.
Well, it also like ties to her trauma. Like this is before
Yeah.
he's like, I'm nobody and I want your body. He's like,
Hang on.
Wait, what movie did you watch?
I mean, I felt like nothing had a sexual connotation with him.
It kind of does, because it does try to have sex with her at that one point in the movie.
Yeah, like towards the end. I mean, it really, I was not joking when I said Death has like ex-abusive boyfriend vibes. Like,
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
But like finding out he died of suicide by gunshot in the boat, all of those like hallucinations make a little bit more sense when you find that out.
Well, and her hearing the gunshot makes sense, but yeah. Anyway.
And her neighbor's like, I don't think you're doing okay.
Yeah.
the neighbor's so sweet too. Like,
Yeah.
very compassionate, very trying to like just help her through the process. Like he's sort of been through it himself, maybe.
Right. Well, because we know he lost his wife.
Yeah. So he has been through it. Yeah, absolutely. I forgot about that. You're right. Yeah.
So we cut to later that night. She's alone. She's watching home movies of them building the house and him like literally physically building it. So he did a lot of the work himself.
Yeah. I know Paige loved this scene.
Oh, the biceps?
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. In Archive 81, where he was a bad guy, he also kind of got to go shirtless a bit for just a little bit. And I was like, nice. But then the rest of the time, he's just kind of in sweaters.
I mean, if I learned anything about Chris Evans, it's that he's never looked better than when he's in those cable knit sweaters from whatever movie that was.
And Knives Out? It's Knives Out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I knew he was the bad guy. Oh, shit. Spoilers.
The movie's been out for a while. But oh my God, him in that cable knit sweater. That sweater makes me want to like, I will go hang out with you on the Cape and eat lobster rolls or whatever.
Right?
Like, please.
Yeah. When I saw him in that sweater, I was like, fuck, I got to get some of those.
Right.
And lose 40 pounds and gain a lot of muscle. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you need to gain height and gain some muscle to pull it off. So she turns the home movies off. She puts them in a box. She puts the camera in a box. She starts boxing up all his clothes and pictures of him and a book that basically has like blueprints for their house. So he was like drawing in it. And then the longer she flips through it, the less coherent the drawings become.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of like fractals, geometric drawings, and then a note that just says confusing patterns, which I thought was kind of funny.
So here's what I wanted more of. When she's flipping through like hand-drawn drawings of the house, like the blueprints, and then it gets into like the fractals and like sort of gives you the indication that the house was built in such a way for a reason.
Yeah.
And we never find out what that reason is. And I would have loved to have delved into that more.
So here's what my brain was going for, because it does get into mazes and labyrinths, and we find out later that essentially he, as in her delusion, because we don't know if this really happened at all or not.
Sure, yeah.
He is trying to create a type of maze or way to trick death or nothing so that it can't get her. And so the house that he's building on the other side of the lake is the exact reverse of their house.
Right.
So that the views and everything would be the same. So what I early in the movie was thinking was, is this an interdimensionality situation where one version of her husband has died and there's some connection to another dimension, and that's where the reverse house belongs, so that he was building it somewhere else?
I think he built a love shack.
Tin roof. Rusted.
If you see a busted house in the middle of woods, I just killed 8 girls in my love shack.
I buried them down in the basement under wood, and they're gonna... Yeah, okay. Anyway.
They're hid in the crawl space. It fits about 20.
20, so hurry up and bring me more necks, honey, because the love shack is a little old place where we can strangle ladies.
I just can't wait to try my new pickup technique. Take photos of women in public.
Oh, don't do that, Mikey. But that's sort of what he does in this, right?
That's sort of what he does a little bit. But yeah, no, I wanted more about why it was the reverse floor plan and why this was important.
Same.
Yeah, they had the book of like, look at this book about mazes.
But if you look at it like this is all in her head, then that's not important, because she will never fully understand and
right.
parcel out that mystery because it's not real.
I think it was just a love shack. And it may have looked like her house. It may not have. I just think he built a place to hook up.
I mean, maybe it's just unfinished or whatever. And supposedly has a bunch of ladies buried under it. Maybe.
Supposedly.
I mean, we don't know, I guess. I mean, I assumed that he actually was killing people, but...
I mean, there is a reading of this movie and a potential timeline, if you want to think of it that way, that is her husband dying by suicide and her discovering that he was also a serial killer, which then prompts her to potentially consider suicide. That is very possible.
That's a reading. Yeah.
I think it falls apart a little bit at the end.
Yeah,
but that
fair.
is possible.
I think it was all in her head. When everything at the end where it all went clear and she just went with her friends and like he was in the background, I was like, oh, this is all in her head.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so we cut to she's asleep later that night and the sound system turns on. It's almost dawn. It's like 5:30 in the morning. And she gets a text message from her dead husband, and she calls it. Somebody answers, and she does hear kind of like a man's voice. and it tells her to look out the window, and her husband is standing naked in the middle of the lake, which, like, thank you. I don't know why he needed to be naked for this, but thank you. She wakes up on the floor of the bathroom, which I do think, again, she's losing time and she's not necessarily conscious of where she's falling asleep or ending up in the house.
Well, she's not waking up where she falls asleep.
Exactly, which to me suggests either sleepwalking, which she does bring up in a little bit.
Yeah, she does mention that.
Or it is all in her head.
Yeah.
And so we can't trust anything that we're seeing from her. But she checks her phone. There's no sign of the text. She checks his phone. She goes and pulls it out of the evidence bag and checks it. There's no sign of the texts.
Yeah.
But while she's looking at his phone, she flips through his photos, and most of them are of her. But then she finds one that she's like, wait a second, I don't remember this. Like, this looks like it might be a photo of me, but I have no recollection of when this would have been, and I don't have a blouse like that. Who is this? It's not me. And so she takes it to her friend and is like, hey, who is that? And she's like, well, that's you. And she's like, I don't think it is. And she's like, I think you're thinking too much about this, and I don't think this is a healthy way to process your husband's passing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just easier if you think about this as he was the man who was in love with you, and that's who you want to remember, and keep it at that.
Yeah.
You know, like, you have your choice of what you want to do, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some stones are best left unturned, I guess, was her point.
Maybe a little bit.
Which,
yeah.
I mean, if your husband had murdered 8 people, I think it's probably important that those 8 families get justice on some level, like, or some answers at least.
Which is why when she doesn't report any of it, that's where I'm like, is it real at all? Did it happen at all?
To your point earlier, Paige, we needed the scene where she does call the cops. They go to the house and there's no bodies there, or the house isn't even there, or whatever, you know, something that signifies, okay, she is an unreliable narrator.
Right. So she decides to go out for drinks with them to try and take her mind off things. And it's really interesting to me who everyone at the table kind of represents different reactions to finding out that someone has died by suicide, where her friend is very compassionate and just trying to kind of stay with her through it. One of the women at the table is very curious, but very kind of timid and trying to be respectful, but is very curious. And then there's one guy that's just a total raging asshole.
Yeah, he's not being very compassionate to the situation.
He is not compassionate at all. And is like rapid fire hot takes that are the worst takes ever, where I'm just like,
why do you think he did it?
Yeah, why do you think he did it? Or like at one point he kind of teeters on the precipice of calling it selfish and kind of implies that her continuing to dwell on it is annoying.
Yeah.
It's a lot where you're just
It's
like
almost as bad if he was like, so you're single now.
So he also suggests, because she basically confesses to them, like, I've been having these weird dreams, I'm losing time, things are not great. And he's like, oh, like sleep paralysis. She's like, it's not like that. But before she even gets a chance to explain it, he just kind of talks over her about sleep paralysis. And she's like, no, I know what I'm a grown up in the world.
I wish I was at that bar, because I'd have been like, you're in like acute grief and this could be very bad.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, like, I have had sleep paralysis before, and it is not at all what she's describing. She is describing something very different.
And generally, if somebody tells me something like, oh, this really happened like right after my husband died of suicide, shot himself in the boat out back, I've been like, this could be related.
Yeah. Well, and she does mention that maybe it's sleepwalking, because that sounds kind of closer to what she's experiencing.
That's more likely than sleep paralysis, because she's falling asleep somewhere and waking up somewhere else.
And waking
That's
up
not
somewhere
paralysis.
else.
Yeah.
Right. And she mentions that he was sleepwalking basically when they moved into the house. But this is where we find out that they were married for almost 15 years. And he was only sleepwalking for the last couple years, which somnambular disorders are tied to stress levels, all kinds of things. And for someone to suddenly start sleepwalking, that's something you should probably see a doctor about. If you were never a sleepwalker before, and then all of a sudden it starts happening. It's weird that this came up on Cult Podcast like a couple weeks ago too, but Mike Birbiglia, if you're not familiar.
Yeah, Sleepwalk with Me.
Is a comedian, and he has a special called Sleepwalk with Me, because he has a very severe sleepwalking disorder that got worse as he got older, but to the point where he walked out a second-story window and almost died. And so those are things to take seriously, especially when they're seemingly developing later in life. That's like another, like dementia can cause sleepwalking and things like that too.
Yeah.
So anyway, she also reveals that he left a note and she brought it with her to the bar.
Which
I loved it.
Yeah, so like this scene, I talked about this last week with the His House episode where like I used humor and stuff to like not really deal with how I felt about it. And that's sort of what she does in this scene, because she is sort of like laughing and like making jokes that are like terrible jokes and you shouldn't make, but like it is to diffuse the situation and to like protect yourself from having to feel real emotions about it.
And I think she really wanted to talk about it. And that guy was like, well, do you know why he did it? Did he leave a note? And she's like, yeah, here it is. Yep. And then like, I wanted to tell him, if you didn't want to play with the big dogs,
you should have stayed on that porch.
Todd,
what do you think that note meant, Mikey? Like that was the suicide note?
Oh, yeah. The porch was the suicide note.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Notes are not as common as people think with suicide.
They're not as common as what people think. Suicide can be very impulsive.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's one of the the more planned out if someone is planning out a suicide attempt, that's a huge red flag because it's rarer. Usually it's an impulse or a reaction to like acute trauma or something that's bad has happened. But if you find someone, that's why giving away possessions or writing a will or writing a note or finding it are huge red flags, because once people start preparing, that tells me it's very, very serious.
Yeah.
And I have read a lot of suicide notes.
I'm sure it's like an occupational hazard, for lack of a better term.
I've read a lot of suicide notes, not with attempt survivors or interrupted attempts, or even after things are complete. And this is kind of realistic. Of generally, people think how you can misread a text.
Yes.
No suicide note to me has had it does not give people closure.
Well, it doesn't give the closure you think it would, I guess.
And a lot of times it just raises more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're rarely long, and they're rarely very thought out. And again, the longer they are, the more thought out they are. If they're typed, like if you sign onto a computer and see your loved one has typed a suicide note and it's saved, that is something you should talk to them about, and they may have to get help with. But I thought it was very realistic of I don't know what this means. I don't know what happened. Because a lot of people will just scribble something down in their impulsive moment, in their suicidal crisis. And that may make sense to a person,
right?
But that might not even make sense to your significant other. Or it's just I couldn't handle the pain. And people are like, well, what pain? It could be emotional. It could be physical. There's just, it's something that is taboo and it is hard to talk about. And people want to rationalize it. They want to blame it on other things. They want to do a lot of things with suicide, but suicide is never going to make sense.
Well, it's unique to that one person's feeling and pain.
Yeah. I like this scene because one, I thought it was funny, and two, I thought the note was more realistic. It was like, oh, he wrote a note. It's stuff I can recognize, but I don't really know what he meant by it.
Yeah, well, and this, I think, for me, lends more credence to it's all in her head, is that she ascribes a meaning and a belief and thoughts to that note.
Yeah.
That only really makes sense to her. Because the note just says, you were right. There is nothing. Nothing is after you. You're safe now. But that could mean any number of things, because it could be, you're right, there's nothing is after you, nothing is chasing you, you're safe now. But in her context, it could mean nothing. The literal personification of death, nothingness, is after you, and you're safe now because I've killed myself, so I won't kill you. She extrapolates, but there's really not much to that note, to be honest.
Yeah.
So her friend takes her home and is like, I'll stay here until you fall asleep. Because she's like, I don't like that you're here alone and drinking and all of this.
Yeah.
But this is where she tells her that she has had a near-death experience. Now, I am one of those people who both believes that there's something after death that we can't possibly know about. It's kind of a choose your own adventure and hope you're right. But also B, doesn't believe in near-death experiences. When people are like, I saw it and I came back. I think that's your brain reacting to stimuli. So I don't know. This is one of those things where she's like, there was nothing there. And I'm like, who's to say?
Haven't they proven that it is? Your brain reacting to stimuli? DMT creates the same sensation as a near-death experience, which is why I want to do DMT or try it.
Yeah. It's one of those things where there's been a lot of studies, and a lot of people are very tied to their near-death experience beliefs, where they're like, I swear I saw, the people I love in heaven and all those things. It's like, yeah, but your brain also knows those people. Your brain is experiencing a very traumatic event. Like, it's going to throw a bunch of stuff at you.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can't prove it or, disprove it with science. It's like very unlikely because like you have all these things physiologically going on with you, but you can't be like, I definitively know that you did not do that. It's hard for people to hear that. It's
because it feels so real to them.
Well, and I have faith. Maybe some people have seen some shit. I don't know.
Yeah,
UFOs
who knows?
are real, so who the hell knows?
I feel like it doesn't exclude me from believing that there's something after, but I also believe that there's a physiological explanation for what people see when they have near-death experiences.
This is the only story that give me credence to their story because like they were kind of a dick, and then like they like died for a little bit, and they're like, I went to hell, so I have to change how I am. And I was like,
oh shit.
I was like, oh damn, dude.
But I think that could also be someone, and those experiences change people regardless.
Yeah. Oh
because
yeah. But like how shitty of a like endocrine system do you have that when DMT releases in your brain that you go to fucking hell?
Hey, you could have like any DMT trip is a toss up. You could have a good one, you could have a bad one, and your body has all of the same chemicals to make that happen. So like, who knows? And it could have been underlying guilt that person felt before.
Yeah.
And, like comes to the surface because they're like, I'm dying. It's kind of like that scene in I think it's Almost Famous, where it looks like the plane's about to crash. And so the guy comes out and he's like, I'm gay. And then the plane like recorrects and he's like, never mind.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like that too, where it's like when you're really faced with like, oh my God, I might not be here anymore. You make different choices than when you complacently think that you could still be here forever.
Yeah. Or you just are dealing with the fact that you will not be here forever when the majority of your life you've been in denial about the fact that you will die.
Yeah.
But if you look at the suicide note, not to refocus us back on the movie, but if you look at that suicide note, knowing later in the movie, she's referring to death as nothing. Like the note says, you were right. There is nothing. So like, it is a thing. Nothing is after you. So like that is after her. And then I guess by him completing suicide and tricking quote unquote death or the nothing, it's not going to be able to find her.
Right.
So my interpretation is wildly different of the note, which is there is nothing, which he was a man of faith. She talks about this. He had all these beliefs.
You think that it's his depression.
Yes. Like, I don't believe there's anything out there. There is nothing. You were right. There is nothing after you. So like after you die, there is nothing.
So you think he lost faith before this movie and that's what drove him to complete suicide?
I think you had depression.
I think that's a very possible explanation for what actually happened. But the movie doesn't tell us.
It doesn't,
because
the movie throws it up. But you can very easily take, with her conversational context clues of like, this is how you can also logic out that note.
Well, and I think there's little breadcrumbs in this movie that indicate what could have maybe actually happened versus what we're seeing. And you kind of put the pieces together. So we've got a somnambular disorder. So he's sleepwalking, which could mean depression, extreme stress, some sort of reaction to medication, like a lot of things that could push someone chemically more towards that depressive side. And if this is a conversation they had and in his depressive state, maybe was questioning the beliefs that he held, that could very easily lead someone to make a choice like this. So I think that's a very realistic potential timeline for what happened. But I think that's maybe the one she doesn't want to accept.
Yes.
And that's why she is kind of living in this much more fantastical timeline where she's living in the most serious Final Destination movie.
Right. The Owen I know would never do that. The Owen I know would never. It's got to be a demon that he's murdering people to protect me for.
Because that's always no one wants to think that a person they loved was in so much pain that they made that choice. But the reality is every person gets a vote. Some people are going to make choices that you don't understand or agree with. And sometimes you will never know why they did. Yeah.
That's why I loved it, because that is really something that is not talked about a lot with suicide losses. Just like sometimes there is no why.
Right.
You know,
or never a why that you will understand because you weren't that person. You weren't in their brain.
Like, oh, maybe he got a diagnosis that said he had terminal. Like when anybody famous completes suicide, they throw that out there of like maybe he got a terminal illness diagnosis.
This sounds terrible. That's one of the few times that I'm like, no, I get it.
Yeah.
Same. Like, Yeah,
Like, I was very sad about Robin Williams, but like sort of understand on a very sad level. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that would not have been my choice, but I don't begrudge him for making that choice. Like,
as someone who has not had suicidal tendencies, that's not been a part of my mental health history.
Oh, yeah.
I could very easily see if I got a diagnosis like that, that's the thing that would make me do it. That is kind of why I appreciated the Judds, where they were like, she died in her battle with mental illness. And you're like,
No, I mean, that, like, most people don't come out and say that. They just don't come out and say that.
I think we are, as a society, moving in a direction where people are more comfortable talking about it. So, like, when you bring up the Judds,
yeah,
I do feel like if it had happened 10 years ago, they probably wouldn't have said that.
right.
But I do love that they were honest about it. And they were like, listen, it's something that our mother has struggled with for a very long time. And she just lost the battle with her mental illness. And, you know, it's something that we should be able to talk about more. And it's like such a heart-wrenching and very sad thing to like witness people talking about it.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it's beneficial for society to hear that and to see that and to understand that.
100%. It's just, shame is a feeling that survivors feel. Shame that their loved one did that, because there's that taboo of like they were weak, or you know, maybe it was my fault, or like, and like people like to blame themselves.
Or maybe there's something I could have done to have stopped it. But the reality is maybe you couldn't have. Like,
exactly.
It's no offense. It's not your responsibility to force other people to live. Like, I understand the impulse of trying to help, and you want to try and help people as much as possible, but sometimes you fail. And I'm not saying that's okay, but you can't feel guilty about it.
If you look at depression as a medical problem and suicidal thoughts as a symptom of severe depression, like stage 4 cancer level of depression, it's just there's nothing to be ashamed of. Like that sort of serious mental illness exists.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does.
And I love how the Judds handled it, because they were like, we're not ashamed. This is what happened. It was a tragedy, but it was...
I'm sorry. I'm sure this is a very serious conversation, but
I can't talk at all.
Tragedy is great.
You know, the thing is, Paige, that's actually what they said when in the interview. Like, Mikey was just quoting them correctly.
No, it was not.
No, they are very eloquent and well-spoken. Mikey is not so much.
I'm like, them people did some stuff. We got to do it.
Mental health, man, I don't even know.
I'm like, we got to get you to the hospital, because depression is a big dog, and we got to get off the porch and go fight this thing.
I do think if I ever do write a note like that, it's going to be in the format of a big dog t-shirt.
We just got to roll up some Zolofts and some bacon strips and make it do.
Zoloft!
Bacon!
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, back to this movie. This is the scene where she is talking to her friend about her previous near-death experience, where she was in a car accident and she was dead for 4 minutes, but then came back. And she says that there was nothing there. And the only person she ever told was Owen, and he disagreed with her. He didn't believe in her story, essentially, where she says there's nothing. He says, I still believe there's something, even though I understand that this is what you experienced and felt. I feel different. And so she takes his note as admitting that she was right.
Yeah.
But then she's going to take that a lot further as the movie goes. But as she's falling asleep, the stereo goes off, and again, she feels like he's there. So she goes outside.
Yeah.
She's got a flashlight, and she sees women running through the forest, multiple women, and they appear to jump right over the cliff near her house.
It's terrifying.
One of them runs past her, Toni Collette style. Like that scene in Hereditary where she runs out of that corner. It's like that. And I was just like, oh, just out of the dark of the forest, just like speeds past her.
But it turns out it was a bachelorette winning out a local Airbnb.
I mean, honestly, like if their neighbor like doesn't live there, but like is there to like maintain it every day, like that makes sense to me. Those girls running his cabin for bachelorette party. They got too heavily into the absinthe and like dodo bird off the cliff.
Absinthe. This is how I know you don't drink.
Doesn't absinthe make you hallucinate?
The traditional bachelorette party drink, absinthe.
Absinthe.
Oh, I just picked the first alcohol I could remember that made you hallucinate.
So classic absinthe that contained wormwood would have had a much higher alcohol parts per volume, essentially. And so some people would claim that you could hallucinate on it because there were poisonous things in it. Modern day absinthe does not. It just tastes like licorice. So it's not very commonly drank.
Now, I will say, I am 2 for 2 for taking women to the absinthe bar.
Are you really? See, I would go to an absinthe bar because I'm curious. I don't like the taste of licorice though, but absinthe has like a whole thing where you don't just like pour it in a bottle and it's like you've got like the spoon and the sugar cube. It's like a whole thing.
You got your opium you got to smoke in the other room. It's like a whole deal.
Right. Yeah. It's a whole deal. So as she's hallucinating, we can still kind of hear her friend's voice calling for her.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming she's still talking to her while she's asleep and this is a dream.
Yeah, because she fell asleep on the lady from Barry. I don't know her name, but she's a great actress.
Yeah.
But she fell asleep on her lap, literally.
Right. So she makes her way down the dock to the boat that's covered in blood, folded clothes, with like a plastic sheeting. So like he planned the whole thing out.
Yeah.
And she turns to look at the dock and there's bloody footprints behind her. And he seems to be there and she seems to be able to like reach out and touch him even though it's invisible.
Yeah.
But she feels him touch her cheek.
This scene right here where she is on the dock with the flashlight and it's like building tension. And there is no real jump scare. Like this was so tense for me. It was super scary.
Yeah.
And then when she reaches out to touch who she thinks is her husband's ghost or whatever, she actually just like passes out and wakes up in the boat, I guess.
She passes out into the boat and it essentially moves across the lake. And at this point, I was just like, mosquitoes out the yang. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like bats would be like swooping down and snatching them off her skin. There'd be so many. It'd be like the worst. But the boat seems to traverse the lake under a red, spicy moon.
Yeah.
She gets out on the other side and climbs ashore, and this is where she sees the other house. However, in this dream or in this hallucination, the house is fully built. And she sees Owen, her husband, with another woman in the house, but she realizes that it's a woman that kind of looks like her. But she watches as the woman kind of freaks out. She runs up to the front of the house. The numbers on the address are backwards.
Yes, they are.
She retrieves a hide-a-key. She walks into the house and sees herself asleep on the couch, where she then wakes up and goes to shut the front door. So that's what made me think, I was like, are we dealing with different dimensions? Like, what is happening?
Yeah, well, it sort of seems that way because she does open the door. We clearly see her opening the door.
Right.
And then we see her waking up because the door was open.
Yeah, exactly.
So I understand why you thought that, Paige. It was very, it hinted at that at least.
Right.
Not me. I was like, oh, this is one of them PTSD mental health horror movies.
I mean, it definitely is.
Yeah.
So everything is kind of where she left it the night before. The glasses, she's drinking brandy and a bunch of other stuff. But she pulls out Owen's computer and logs in and pulls up the photos, specifically the one of the woman that she doesn't recognize. And there's like variant files of a bunch of different women, and they all kind of look like her.
Yeah.
But they also definitely all look like the women she saw in her hallucination the night before.
Yeah.
If that's the worst thing she finds on his computer's hidden fixture folder.
We'll get to it in the next scene, but the neighbor hints that he had some dark urges, and I was like, please don't let it be children. Just like, there are real bad things you could find on a computer that could somehow only get you 12 years in prison.
Yeah, I think his dark urges were just like, he likes to hit it and then quit it. You know what I'm saying?
That's not that dark of an urge. I wouldn't call that dark, personally.
It's a dark urge if you set his character up like they set it up, of like a religious person with a lot of faith who's deeply in love with her.
Yeah, I don't think they set him up as an overly religious person, just a person who believes there's something after.
Yeah, they didn't even mention that he's like Christian or anything. I mean, he could just believe there is an afterlife and be non-denominational.
Yeah.
I think they set it up where like Owen was so devoted to you all the time, and like he loved no one but you, and like I think his dark urges were like, I want some like different, I want some strange.
I feel like there's a reading of this movie that he could have been, that could have been the reality, and that the only real verified, air quotes, cheating attempt is the girl in the bookstore. If the bodies aren't real, if any of this is not real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if the bodies aren't real and none of that's real, the only thing that we know is real is that I guess you could say he did cheat on her because they kissed. And it could have gone further, but they stopped and he drove her home and he felt bad about it, from what it seems like, right? So
yeah, well, and I also think it's not insignificant to note that he picked people that looked like her.
I mean, he has a type, Paige. I don't know.
People have types.
I get that, but it's more than just a type. Like that girl especially in passing, you actively confuse her for his wife. Like in that picture in the bookstore, I was like, yeah, that's her.
Oh, me too. I was like, that's definitely you, honey. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, we see in that picture set you were just talking about, like, it definitely isn't her.
But how many people have been cheated on for a younger version of themselves?
I don't even think she's that much younger. That's the thing that I was kind of grappling with, is like, she's a little younger, but not wildly younger. Like, it's not a case of like she's in amazingly better shape or wildly better looking or anything like that. So that was kind of a weird sticking point for me of there's a very realistic narrative of what could have happened that she's ignoring in favor of her kind of delusion. And that's the one piece that doesn't quite fit in that narrative. And you need it for her delusion for the bodies, but I don't know, it doesn't super work for me story-wise if this is in her head.
Yeah. And I wish there wasn't ambiguity about that.
Unless it's completely a dream and she never came to the house.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I think she did come.
We don't know. We have no idea. It's nighttime at the house. Pretty much anything that happens after dark in that house, you can't trust.
Yeah.
Just like my house.
So there is definitely a reading of she never came to the house. That never happened. Her only interaction with her is in the bookstore where the girl's like, I never kissed your husband. Like, we went for drinks once. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't do any of this. And that could be the split.
I like that.
That could be. Yeah.
Anyway, so she later that day goes walking in the woods, trying to find the house on the other side of the lake. She runs into her neighbor and tells him what she's looking for. And he's like, no, and you should go home. But she doesn't.
Yeah.
And she sees a mark in a tree. She walks towards it and she finds a half-built house. It's only partially built. And it is the reverse of her house. And she goes through and there's not much there. The house is not built, but she finds like a bucket with a sculpture in it. And the floorboard creaks as she kind of walks towards it.
Yeah.
She thinks she hears footsteps, so she grabs the sculpture and leaves. She goes to her neighbor's house and confronts him with it. Now, this is the other thing of like, she finds this sculpture. This sculpture exists.
Yes, it does. Because she brings it back with her. Yes.
Yeah, and confronts the neighbor with it.
Yeah.
And so that exists, but we have no telling like what that's about or what it means. But she confronts him with like, there's a second house. What was he building? And the neighbor doesn't even admit that there's another house. He just says that like, I saw him wandering in the woods. He was kind of muddy. He had a woman with him. But he told me not to tell you. I thought it was you, and then it wasn't you. So this is, again, one of those things where it's like, well, maybe he did bring the other girl there. Like, is that even the same woman? Who knows who it is or what it is?
Yeah.
Nobody knows. But this is where he comes and confesses that he has shameful urges. And the neighbor's like, I didn't ask him what they were. But he's like, I didn't want to tell you because everything seemed good after, but I was wrong, clearly. And he's like, you should not be hurting yourself by digging into this. Basically, like, you should take some time to rest and relax and maybe never dig into this. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Like, he's dead. What are you going to do? But instead, she goes home. She dumps out all the stuff. She finds the gun and she finds one of his books. And it has, and I'm probably going to mispronounce the shit out of this, Caerdroia, Caerdroia. But it is in relation to labyrinths. I'll talk about it a little bit in fun facts.
Yeah, I've only ever read that rune, so I don't know.
But she does find like a drawing of the doll and a photo of an older version of the doll and references to mazes to distract dark forces, and thinks she hears footsteps upstairs. She goes upstairs and then grabs a bottle and investigates, I think, the basement. This is another case of like, you're not sure where she is in the house, but this is where she sees there's a column and a door behind that looks like the shadows form a man.
Yes, it's very, very cool.
It's cool.
They use this one specifically a lot later on.
Yeah. And she thinks she hears him. She drops the bottle, but he's gone. And she tracks down the bookstore where he bought the book because it's stamped in that book and another book. And it's in Utica, New York. So she drives out there, tries to ask them questions about the book, but it's like an old-timey bookstore where they like don't keep records.
Right. She was like, can you tell me what other books my husband's bought? And he's like, No, I have no way to do that. I'm so sorry. He actually does seem like he's trying to be helpful, but he just can't do what she's asking.
Yeah, well, and this sounds terrible. When you find a good bookstore like this, the key is to become a regular customer there and then like get recommendations from the people who are there all day, every day.
Yeah.
So like that's how that's the romance bookstore I go to now.
Oh, you mean the Ripped Bodice?
The Ripped Bodice, Culver City, California. I can ask them for recommendations and they'll bring me back like 6 books and be like, these are all going to probably fit what you're asking for.
Yeah.
And they're actually really great about it. I love that store. It's wonderful. Anyway, they have no records.
Yeah.
But she does recognize that bookshelf and she goes through the aisles and then recognizes a girl who works there as the girl in the photo.
Yeah, except her hair's up in a ponytail. Yeah.
Yes. Now, here's the other thing. Todd, you've been with Natalie for a long time. I've been with Jake for a long time. Have you ever seen someone out that looks like your significant other and are like, oh my God, that looks just like you, and snap a picture and send it to your significant other?
I have not, but I do think if I ran into someone that looked a lot like her, I probably would.
So this happened to me once where I was out with my family. Like I had gone to visit my family for something and we were at some like, I want to say it was like the pirate show in like near Disneyland. Like they're kind of like a medieval times or whatever.
Nice.
And there was one of the guys that was clearly one of the like rigging guys, like one of the strong set mover dudes.
Yes.
Looked exactly like Jake. Like they could have been related, and we absolutely snapped photos and then sent them to Jake to be like, it looks just like you. There was a part of me that wondered if that's why he took this photo. Like it doesn't explain all the other photos, but it looks so much like her that I was like, maybe that's why he took it. Maybe that explains what's happening.
Yeah.
Anyway, she confronts the girl, and the girl is like, I think you knew my husband.
Biblically.
Biblically. And this girl is just like, I think you knew my husband. By the way, he's dead. Suicide.
Yeah.
Like, she's trying to make her feel bad, definitely. But this girl is like, I didn't sleep with your husband. I barely knew him.
It was first base. It was like an HJ.
Not even.
Not even that. Yeah.
Not even, because in this scene, she's just like.
Well, that's the implication of drinks, right?
Not necessarily, no. I would say in this scene, what she says is he came in a couple times a year. One time he came in and we talked a little bit longer. We had drinks. That was it.
Yeah.
That's
she even
the
owns to
end
the
of
fact
it.
that they flirted a little bit and they went and got drinks. And that she would have had sex with him, but it never got to that.
It never got to that. It never came up.
Yeah.
And so this is, depending on whether or not you believe she comes to the house later. If you don't think she does, then I think that this is just a girl who got blindsided by a lady in a bookstore.
Yes.
And the other half of it is in Beth's mind.
Could be.
Anyway, we cut to Beth kind of explaining what has happened to her coworker, her friend who's always coming over and whatever. Claire, I think her name is.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, if they were fucking, that makes more sense to me. Like, if he was just cheating on me, that makes more sense than not. And all these books and...
Then he murdered 8 women to confuse death to not come get me? Yeah. I would say cheating does make more sense than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And her friend is just like, first of all, there's no need to be digging into this. Like, even if he did cheat on you, why? Do you want to remember that? Like, who's to argue with your memory of him at this point? He's gone. He can't explain himself. And her friend even says, she kind of argues for the more direct interpretation of he was depressed and that's why it happened, and you're trying to ascribe more info to this than is necessary. And she kind of was like, I don't believe her. I don't believe you. I don't believe anything.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, that's a approach.
Yeah. And she essentially says, like, maybe you're right. Maybe I'll take some time alone and go stay at a hotel or whatever. I'll see you later. She goes back home, drinks heavily once she gets there.
Yeah.
And this is where the girl from the bookstore supposedly shows up.
Yeah, because she's downstairs and you hear a knocking. Like, isn't this where she's like, I'm leaving tonight, so if you want to talk to me, say something. And then you hear the knocking at the door and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And she goes up there and then opens the door because no one's there. And then that's when she sees the girl outside, which I think leads me to believe that she's not really there.
Yeah, maybe she's not there. The only thing that really is incongruous with that is her conversation with the neighbor who says that he saw her husband with a woman.
That is true, yeah.
But here's the thing. We also don't know who that woman was.
True.
For all we know, it's a friend. It's somebody coming to check out the second house, if there even is a second house. Like, who knows? But this whole scene, the girl from the bookstore explains, like, nothing happened. Like, we didn't have sex, but we did go out for drinks. And then he came and picked me up for like a day. We kissed. He showed me the second house.
Yeah.
And things kind of started to get a little physical, and he started choking me. And that's not something I'm into. So I kind of freaked out, and then everything stopped and he took me home, is basically what she says.
Yeah. And it seems like, and maybe I read this differently, it seems like she, I forget her name, lady from the bookstore, did not fear for her life when he was choking her.
Yes.
It was more like a sexual thing, like a 365 thing.
Yes.
Maybe he liked some stuff she wasn't into.
Well, and I think that's, in this scene, it seems like that's how she's interpreting it.
Yeah.
But that's not how Beth is interpreting it. And in part that may be because Beth has had a different sexual experience with him, and that's not part of it.
Sure.
And that could be a way to read the conversation with the neighbor where he says dark urges that he didn't feel like he could share with you. Maybe it is a sexual BDSM thing, and he misread signals with the girl at the bookstore. But that is how the girl at the bookstore is explaining it, as like, things got physical. He made a move. It's not something I'm into. It made me uncomfortable. We stopped. He took me home.
Yeah.
Beth is reading this as he was going to murder her.
Yes.
Yeah, but in reality, he put on his Tony the Tiger costume.
You can't choke people with fur gloves on.
Paige, you can.
Paige, you definitely can. Because he was like,
If you let me choke you, that'd be great.
But that's why you have to talk about it.
Yeah, you got to communicate like Tony the Tiger, your sexual
like
needs.
Tony the Tiger.
the shapes of the flakes will confuse it.
What?
The demon.
Demons hate frosted flakes, Paige. This is like base level demonology stuff.
I mean, I do too. It's a shit cereal. Like, you could have Fruit Loops or Lucky. Oh, fuck. I should get some Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms later. That sounds fucking amazing. Anyway, so the girl leaves. And so Beth continues to drink and then goes out to the other house on the other side of the lake and is yelling about it. Like, I talked to her. I know what's up. Come and get me. She drops her flashlight and then she kind of steps through a wet board on the floor and she looks down and there's multiple dead bodies down there.
Yeah, they're in trash bags, but you see like a hand. Like, it's clear they're dead bodies.
Right. She rushes back to the house. She calls her best friend and is like, I found something I shouldn't have found. And I'm like, you should be calling this in to the coroner.
Yeah.
Not your best friend, but whatever. But she then says, like, I know my husband and I don't think he would have done this. I don't know. I don't even know if it's real or not.
Right.
I wish you were here and I wish that it were morning. And she sets the phone down without hanging up, which I think is interesting. And I think that's probably why her friend comes so quickly the next day. So she gets in the shower. The sound system comes on. So she immediately gets out of the shower because that's like her signal that he's around.
Yeah. Well, and it plays that same song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's calling out to try and talk to him. She doesn't see him. And she finally like breaks down. And for the first time in this movie that we see, really allows herself to like cry and grieve for a moment. And when she opens her eyes, "Here" is written on the fog of the mirror.
Yeah.
It's some Candyman shit.
It is. I did not love this. It was scary.
Well, this next section is like there's some scares sprinkled through the front, and then this section is pretty scary, pretty rough.
Yeah.
Because she wipes the glass, but only sees herself. Then she turns around and sees wet footprints, which, by the way, could have been her own because she just got out of the shower, but whatever.
Very true. Yeah.
But she thinks she sees him in the shadows and reaches out to touch him. And this is something they did that was really cool.
I loved the way they showed the touching, man. I loved it. So good.
It's definitely like glass or something, but you're seeing the depressions in her fingers, and then you're seeing her skin kind of depress as what essentially are invisible hands are like running their way up her like arms,
like
and
caressing
her neck.
her. Yeah, like holding her. I mean, she is like pleading for her husband to hold her. I called it though when she's like, "Is it really you?" And I said to the TV, "No." Before it said it, I was like, "I knew it."
Well, but not before, because it's caressing her and then it pushes her back into the bathroom up against the sink in a very sexual way.
Oh, I was like, is she about to get that ghost dick?
Yeah. She's about to get that ghost dick.
Yeah. Ectoplasm. Know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. And this is when she asks Owen, no, I'm not Owen. And she freaks the fuck out.
As she should.
And it locks her in the bathroom. And through the mirror, she watches as Owen essentially murders a different woman by smashing her up against the mirror.
Right. Because he loves his wife. Right, Mikey?
That's true love. If you truly love something, murder 8 people to prove it to them. And they'll come back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, if you really love something, murder 8 people to prove your love and get off the porch.
Yeah,
Big
if you didn't want to get off the porch and murder 8 people, you can't run with the big dogs.
Exactly.
And have true love.
Exactly.
Oh my God. Anyway, the ghost Owen, not Owen, nothing.
I believe it's pronounced no-win page.
The ghost Owen breaks in and strangles her and smashes her head against the mirror.
Yeah.
And in the shattered mirror, it looks like a fractured version of Owen sees her before murdering that woman against the mirror, like slamming her head one last time. But after she breaks the mirror, the doors open, so she crawls out into the bedroom, and all of the women around her that we've seen in the woods and everything are like, you gotta hide. And they're like crawling under the bed and in the closet. It's very creepy.
Yeah.
And she watches Owen murder another woman, like strangle her to death.
Yeah.
She runs through the house, and in different rooms of the house, she's seeing him either murdering women or just after murdering women, crying over their like bloody bodies. Like it's clearly like messing him up.
Okay. Take the murder part out.
Okay.
How do you get 8 women to come back to your house?
At once or individually?
Individually. But then later, when you get off the porch, at once.
Mikey's just really looking for dating tips, Paige, is what he's saying.
I give Mikey dating tips all the time, and Mikey doesn't take my dating tips.
You know who does take tips?
I take the tip. That's how this works.
But not Mikey's tip. One specific tip. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I got by being good at dating. You should take my advice.
Listen, Paige, I know you're good at dating because you snagged a Jake.
Yep.
But like, I don't want Mikey to take your advice because I love his stories.
I had to get off the apps just because everyone there is like pretty much justifiably murdering 8 people to love someone. Like, who comes out on their profile and is like, I don't believe in dinosaurs?
That was the craziest one. That was the craziest one.
I could not believe that.
I was like, oh, that's really funny. They're just old rocks. Oh, she's serious.
I literally had an argument with a woman because she thought that dinosaurs didn't exist, that God put them here as a test.
I've heard that from a couple people, that either God put them here or the devil put them here as a test. And I'm like, no.
I literally told to her I'm not allowed to have conversations this stupid anymore. And I left. I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard someone say.
If someone comes at me, I'll be like, of course dinosaurs are real. Have you not seen Jurassic Park?
Dino DNA.
Love that.
What is something that someone could tell you was not real and you'd be like, I'd excuse this?
Oh, no.
The state of Delaware? Dinosaurs?
Okay, first off, Delaware doesn't exist. It's just East Maryland.
East Maryland.
Yeah. Delaware is like East Maryland County. Like, it should not be its own state.
Delaware? Nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. What if someone was like, if you put sausage in a taco, it is a sausage taco. But if a sausage tastes like a taco, it is a taco sausage.
I cannot reopen these taco wounds.
Those are just rocks. They don't exist.
God put taco sausage on Earth as a test.
That's such an inside joke. Oh my God.
Yo, if you haven't heard the Half of It episode on Romance in the Pod, it goes weird places.
Like, all of our episodes don't go to weird places.
That is true.
I had a fleeting memory of, and maybe this got edited out of an episode, of me saying that Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite Disney movies, which it is, and it devolving into you guys saying that I would date anyone who gave me a library and choked me a little bit. Did that make the edit?
Paige, that definitely made the Half of It episode. Yeah. I edited that section today and I left that section in.
Paige, Tony the Tiger could 69 you and choke you at the same time.
I don't want this. I don't want this at all. He's definitely going to murder me for his reverse house. No, please stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nicki Minaj or whoever the fuck.
Oh my God. It's Missy fucking Elliott. Misdemeanor Missy Elliott. You will put respect on her name.
If I can remember it, sure.
I actually don't believe that she exists.
Oh my God, I can't.
Much like the state of Delaware, I think Missy Elliott is just East Maryland.
No.
Missy Elliott is a test from God.
to see if we can withstand her awesomeness, maybe, yes.
Spoiler alert, the late 90s, early 2000s could not.
Anyway, as she makes her way through the house, in one of the rooms, it's Christmas for some reason, which my new thing is anytime it's Christmas in a movie is shouting, is this a Christmas movie? It makes me laugh because 365 2 is a Christmas movie.
Hell yeah. Hell
I'm
yeah.
all in.
We got to do
saving it for
365
Christmas.
too at Christmas time.
They
yeah.
have a mafia Christmas, and then they end up just like tonguing each other at the table in front of their whole family. It's the fucking weirdest shit I've ever seen.
You just don't understand their culture, okay?
I'm Italian.
It's a Paige. I'm Italian.
I'm in Italy. That's what she said that one time.
I'm in Italy.
I'm in Italy.
Somebody made a meme of that.
I know. I loved it.
Anyway, this is where in this Christmas scene, he's got her on the couch, and it implies that this is like a memory maybe that she had repressed or whatever, or is just living rent free in her brain for this hallucination, that he tried to choke her on Christmas while she was like sleeping in his lap.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was like, you've been a naughty girl this year.
You're getting coal, but also this dick.
Hell yeah.
Oh God. But this is like this version of Owen kind of explains to her like, I am what you felt when your heart stopped. I am nothing. And I've been chasing you this entire time. And I started whispering in his ear. And in order to stop me, basically like I kept asking for him to kill you. So instead he killed all these other people and gave them to me. He was tricking me. But when he couldn't trick me any longer, that's when he unfortunately took his own life.
Yeah. I figured it's because the cops were closing in and he was about to get arrested for 8 murders. So
yeah. They're like, he made this one lady eat so much Chef Boyardee that she burst. And I'm like, no, I did that voluntarily.
But you know who helped him set up those murders? Professor
Boyardee.
Boyardee?
Yeah.
He's nothing.
He's the nothing. All of the like silhouettes of a man in this movie have a chef hat.
It should be the SpaghettiOs O, and the O just represents the void.
Hell yes.
Anyway, she wakes up on the couch in this kind of scene, and the shadow is holding her where Owen would be. But what it is the way that the ceiling and the like stairs of the house move, it like looks like a head. So it looks like the shadow is holding her down.
It's so good.
She gets into like an invisible man shadow fight, and it's holding her up in place in the shape of the statue. She sees 2 moons, one spicy, one regular. And we cut to the next morning where her friend is pulling up to her house to be like, some shit went down. I need to check on her. And she's looking for her everywhere and can't find her.
Yeah.
But she does see that the mirror is smashed. There's a lot of chaos around the house. And we cut back to Beth's view, which is now her in the boat with her husband naked. I'm not sure why he's naked. Oh, I think because he took his clothes off before he shot himself.
He did. You actually see him. I think he puts the note on the clothes that are folded next to him. Yeah.
Yes. But we can hear her friend calling for her through the hallucination. But essentially, the hallucination of her husband in the boat is trying to convince her to take her own life.
Yeah.
And her friend sees what's going on, dives out into the lake, pulls her out of the boat, although pulls her out as Beth seems to kind of make her own choice not to do it, because she kind of lowers the gun. But Beth and Mel, the neighbor, pull her up onto the dock, and they're like, hey, we've got you. You're safe now. There's nothing there. It's fine. But as she looks out into the boat, we see through the shadows of the waves, we see that there is like a shadow figure in the boat. And that's the movie.
So having seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what did you guys think about The Night House?
I do like it. I do have questions about some of the story stuff that I think maybe one or two scenes could have fixed.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough to ruin the movie for me because I did enjoy it. And I liked talking about it, definitely.
It's definitely one of those movies where I want to like read an interview with the director.
Yeah.
To kind of see the vision or whatever.
For me, it's one of those movies where I wish I didn't have to read an interview with the director. I wish they had just completed their movie in such a way that makes more sense. Like, I feel the same way about Donnie Darko. Like, I get the vision of Donnie Darko would have been cool if they had executed it in a way that, like, is understandable on a first watch.
I'm not opposed to a deep dive on a movie. I feel the same way with Ex Machina, where I think there's like tons of stuff to kind of dig into and like talk about. So I'm not opposed to that. I think for me, one or two changes to scenes would have made it definitive for me, and then it would have been a thought-provoking conversation of why do you think they represented it in this way. I don't think the ambiguity ruins it, though, because I think it promoted an interesting discussion here about, is it in her head? Is it not? What actually happened? So I kind of like that about it.
Yeah. I really love that last scene, though, when her friend shows up and, like, sees the broken mirror and runs outside and, like, jumps in the lake to go get her and, like, literally pulls her out of the trance, pulls her into the water, and then saves her and brings her out. And then when they're looking back over the dock, they see the nothing in the reflection of the lake.
Mm-hmm. Well, she sees it.
Yes. It's such a well done movie. It was very scary and, like, does sort of hit some emotional stuff that I would rather not revisit the week after we did His House. But like, I understand why people think this is a good movie. This is a good movie. I'll never watch it again. But I feel the same way about His House. I do feel like His House is a little better, but this is also really good.
I think His House balances their story and their metaphor a little bit better than this does.
That's why I think it's a little bit better.
However, I would absolutely watch this again because I would wonder if on a second watch I would catch things that I missed.
Sure,
that would help solve the mystery. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the metaphor works. When the ending first happened and it kind of cuts, I was like, oh, I hate this. I hate this ending.
Yeah.
And then I started like really processing the movie, and that's when I came to like what I thought the metaphor was, what I really thought happened, and things like that. And then I was like, well, if this movie's got me thinking about it days after I see it, then maybe it is better than I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think the ending doesn't work awesome for a movie. It's not bad, but it doesn't work awesome, but it works amazingly for the metaphor.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, oh, I sort of get it. That's cool. Whatever, man. That's awesome. Good for you guys for making the metaphor stick. Because some movies like have strong metaphorical messages and then don't stick the landing. I do feel like this one stuck it.
Yeah.
So, Paige, you want to hit us with some fun facts?
Yeah, very few fun facts.
Well, hit us with your fun facts.
Big dog fun facts.
Hell yeah.
So very, very few fun facts. Real quick, as she's flipping through the photos on his phone, one of the first photos is of two men laughing. That's actually the film's screenwriters. Luke, I'm going to butcher this last name. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Piotrowski and Ben Collins, who met in high school.
Yeah,
and
Collins is hard to pronounce.
They met in high school and actually started writing together in college. Which is
awesome.
I feel like writing partners often meet in like college or near it or after when they're working on similar projects. It's very rare for people to have known each other that long and be writing together just because people change over time. Anyway, this did premiere at Sundance in 2020 and then it was withheld from release because of COVID-19. This probably would have had a theatrical release if not for...
Oh, that sucks. It's like the His House disorder.
Actually, I do have box office for this. It was in theaters for 8 weeks.
Okay. Not full release though, right?
No.
Yeah, it was released a year and a half after it premiered. So it was actually released in like 2021.
It was. Yeah. So I was going to talk about that. But yeah, it did. So it like launched in 2020 and then it got a theater release in August of 2021. And we'll talk about that in box office.
Yeah, because of COVID, Rebecca Hall, who's the lead in this film, who's been in a million things and is like I think was a Bond girl at one point, if I remember correctly. She was also in Godzilla vs. Kong. And because they hold this movie, they end up coming out literally months apart in 2021.
Okay.
So a Cerderoya, and again, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry. Is a Welsh turf maze. So it's like a grass labyrinth, usually in a 7-fold labyrinth design. And they used to be created by shepherds on hilltops, and they were the setting for ritual dances, but we don't have a ton of information about them because it was a long, long time ago. In the bar scene where they're discussing the book that they've been assigned to read about inspiring their students, they make a reference to the Dead Poets Society about standing on their chairs to change their lives.
Yeah.
And most, as I mentioned, most of the effects are practical. One of the few places where they use computer generation is at the very end to make it look like there's a shadow guy in the boat. They just kind of darken some of the waves. So your brain kind of fills in the rest.
Yeah.
And those are your fun facts.
Very cool. Well, thank you for those fun facts, Paige. Let's talk a little bit of box office. But as Paige mentioned, it did start streaming in 2020, but it did get a theatrical release on August 20th of 2021. It was in 2,240 theaters, which is a little over, it's probably about 2/3 of the theaters in the U.S. Oh, and it was number 8 in the theaters that week. It was beat by Free Guy, Paw Patrol, the movie, Jungle Cruise, Don't Breathe 2, and Respect were your top 5. And then there were a few other movies. Then The Night House was number 8. What do you think it made in its opening? And big air quotes on the word opening there because it actually had been out for a year already, but didn't get a theatrical release until 2021. So what did you think it made in its first weekend out in theaters?
I'm going to say 1 million.
Okay.
I'm going to say 2 million.
Mikey, you're closer. It was $2.8 million, which I think is like really good for a movie that's already been out for a year streaming. Like,
Do we have a budget for this?
we don't. And I did look for it. Like, I could not find it anywhere. So let's talk about what it made total. So domestically, it brought in $7.1 million in the theatrical run. Internationally, it brought in 8.3, almost 8.4, for a total of $15.5 million. Then that plus what it made on the streaming rights, I bet it made money. Like, I don't know what the budget was. I seriously doubt the budget was over $15 million. And then I don't know what HBO paid to be able to stream it, but I bet it was a good number of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it made money.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it in relation to like Invisible Man, which this feels very Invisible Man-ish to me, and
I
that
can
was
see
like
that.
7 million.
Yeah.
So if you told me that this was like a $7 to $12 million movie, I'd believe you. That sounds about
absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
I think that's probably about right.
But that's your box office. So, Mike, you want to hit him with that scary scale?
Yeah, our scary scale listeners is a scary scale that we have on 1 to 10
Yep.
of how scary we found the film when we watched it today. Our 1 example is Ghostbusters. Our 10 example is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Paige, what is your scale?
This is a 2 for me.
2?
Yeah,
Wow.
this is a 2 for
That's
me.
low. Okay.
I was too impressed by how they were doing the depth of field with the shadow people to be scared by it. Like, every time I saw it, I was like, fucking
There was a lot of
cool.
jump scares.
Yeah, there were some. I mean, I think the one that got me the worst was that girl running out of the shadows.
Yes.
That got me the most. That's the worst for me in this movie because every other instance of like the shadow people or whatever, I was too, A, trying to solve the mystery, and B, too preoccupied with how cool it looked the way they were doing it. So this did not scare me very much. I was like a 2.
It scared me. I'm going to give it a 5.
Dang. Okay, I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to give it a 4 because I was very freaked out.
Yeah, it was scary, man. Like, I don't think it was quite as scary as his house, but it was scary.
Well, that's our scary scale.
Yeah. So this week, you guys made me watch The Night House. What movie are you going to make us all watch next week?
So I wanted to pick an older, some would say lighter film for this. So we debated a couple of them. There's a lot of properties that we've only done one movie on that we can do series. So we're going to go back to Poltergeist and do Poltergeist 2, which is pretty good and scary.
I'm excited. I've never seen Poltergeist 2.
I've never seen Poltergeist 2 either, but we did Poltergeist. The original Poltergeist was episode 4, back when both of you guys sounded differently. And it was released on June 25th, 2018. So we haven't visited this franchise in a long time.
Well, Todd, you see, I've murdered 8 co-hosts to protect you.
That's how I know that even though you won't say it, Mikey, you love me. Because you got off the porch.
That's the dumbest
Good Lord.
running joke we've had, and I'm
here for it, though. Yeah. So your homework for next week is to revisit the Poltergeist franchise with Poltergeist 2 and then check in for that episode. So, guys, if you like this show but want to hear this power throuple on another movie review show about romance and romantic comedies, check out Romancing the Pod, where Mikey, Paige, and I break down and make fun of romantic movies. It's a lot of fun, guys. Check it out. If you want to follow us on social, please do. We are at Horror Virgin or online at horrorvirgin.com. If you want to follow us all individually, you can do that as well. Paige is at Paige Wesley on Twitter or Rampage Wesley everywhere else, including TikTok. Mikey is at mrandolph24 and I am at Todd J. Awesome. If you like the show so much and you want to help financially support it, please do by going to patreon.com/horrorvirgin, where you can get a lot of great levels and a lot of great stuff like bonus episodes, director's cut episodes where they're a little bit longer and you get them actually a day earlier than the regular feed drop. We do a lot of great things like listener requests and stuff like that. So guys, check out the Patreon and help support the show.
If you want to financially support me, but not Todd, just look me up on Venmo.
If you can't financially support the show, that's understandable. That's fine. But if you want to hang out with us on the daily, join the Facebook group at facebook.com/group/horrorvirgin. We also link it like once a week. So just find it there and join the awesome Facebook group. Literally, we're in there talking every day. It's awesome. And guys, we got a P.O. box. So if you want to send us some love letters or whatever you might send to a P.O. box, it's actually not a P.O. box. It's like a regular street address. It's pretty awesome. It's 6688 Nolensville Road, number 108-34, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027. So send us some stuff.
Yeah.
And if you want to check out our Twitch stream, we're at twitch.tv/Todd Awesome, where we will be playing horror video games. So if you have always wondered what it would be like to watch me get scared, you can now do that on Twitch while I play these horror games. It's twitch.tv/Todd Awesome, guys. Check it out. It's a lot of fun for you. Not a lot of fun for me. This episode was brought to you by
Nick B.
Fun fact about Nick B.
Oh, yeah?
He stayed on the porch because he's not ready to run with the big dogs.
Oh, you calling him out?
Well, Nick B, you have been called out by Mikey, and I expect to see a fun interchange on Twitter. This episode also brought to you by Tia, and Tia's teenager is driving her crazy this week. So how is Tia's teenager driving her crazy this week?
She keeps standing on chairs and shouting, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." You know how teenagers do.
Fucking love that movie, though. Like, on the real, love that movie.
Yeah, cry all that
Same.
movie. Mm-hmm.
Same. Did I ever tell you guys a story about how I thought Dead Poet Society ended when his dad showed up to watch him in the play? Because my parents would turn it off at that point. And if you stop watching it there, like, it actually has like a happy ending. You're like, oh, his dad came to see him at the play. That's great.
Oh my God.
I didn't know until like I was like 17 or 18 watching the full movie in my friend's basement that like there's another 30 minutes that are real dark.
Yeah, your mom and dad are like, take this out. We'll put in Seven Brides for Seven Brothers now.
Honestly, that or 1776, the musical.
Oh, God.
This episode also brought to you by the number Jeff, and Jeff wants you to check out his podcast, Kissing Jessica Jones, where each week they break down a new episode of the Jessica Jones television show, Agent Carter, or WandaVision. So if you want to recap podcasts for any of those shows, check out Kissing Jessica Jones. This episode's also brought to you by Jonathan, and Jonathan normally sends us some spooky spider videos, but this week he sent us something a little bit different. You guys ready for it?
Yeah.
Here you go. Why are you laughing, Paige? Explain it.
Oh, I know the song. And right now there's somebody dressed as Jason, and that seems like it would be a pretty fun combination.
Yeah, it's a parody of Mama Said Knock You Out, but it's like Jason or Michael rapping it.
That's Jason.
They're the same character. Oh man, I do love like the horror community is amazing to me because they'll like do shit like this. That is like really high production. Like he's in a boxing ring rapping this, and I'm here for it.
Knock you out. Pamela Voorhees gave him very specific instructions.
And she did say, well, more than just knock them out, right? Like it's
Yeah.
It's a little bit more violent than that. So we now return you, right, to another episode of the Patreonicals
after our orgy episode last week.
Now, Mikey, you said last week we would delve into how many people got pregnant last episode. So I think we should pick up there.
Is this the Maury paternity test results episode?
Yes. So
hell yeah.
Okay, so cut to one scene.
Wait.
It's
Okay.
Allie and Amber, the mermaids. They take Scott, who's made a thing, and
He's made a thing, or he is
he's
like
a thing.
the
He's
thing.
made of
He's
rock.
all rocks. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And the Voldemort-like ghost that is. He's a real person now, but he's like a Voldemort, like shriveled up body, Wes, and they kiss them both. Well, Amber kisses Scott and Allie kisses Wes, and they're like, oh my gosh, open mouth kiss. And they're like,
Wait, is this a sexual kiss or like part of their culture?
Yeah, is this part of their culture?
it's actually neither. This is actually part of their reproductive cycle.
Oh, but that's not sexual for them? I'm so confused by Atlantis.
They just transferred the fertilized eggs back into the males.
Oh, like seahorses?
I'm just picturing somebody transferring like a chicken egg, just like wow, into another person's
No, it was like
mouth.
caviar. It was like, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, I don't like this at all.
And they're like, congratulations, you're going to be fathers of hundreds of mer peoples.
I did not see that coming in their mouth.
Oh no.
Wes was like, I've got a body back for like 2 hours and I'm pregnant.
Pregnant?
And the king of the mermaids comes and
Wait, question. Do Atlanteans get like, are they like seahorses where sometimes the dads get pregnant?
the seahorses, the females fertilize the eggs and then transfer it back into the males
Oh,
for them
okay.
to carry that, just like the mermaids. Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So King Triton shows up?
Yes, and he is like, y'all are like honorary. You two are like honorary mer people, man, because you're pregnant with our people, and unfortunately, here in Atlantis, we're pro-life.
We believe that life starts when these fertilized eggs are regurgitated into your mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They actually had some supremely underwater courts handle it.
I don't like this at all. But also, I will say, being pro-life, do they also provide for those mer children after birth? Or are they just don't care, like they just want them born, but they don't care about them after?
Because one mer person can bring hundreds of mer people to life. Cheap labor is the goal of
This is terrible.
This is even
I
more
think
dark than America right now.
We need a mer protest about this.
We need a Mervolution page.
Yes, the Mervolution will not be televised because it's underwater and TVs don't work down there.
But they do. They do provide them.
They have some sort of social safety fishing net.
Nailed
fish-
it.
I don't
Nailed
like
it.
this. I don't like where this is going at all.
Every child gets sprinkled fish food.
Oh, that's gross.
It's what they eat, Paige.
Wow, that's very offensive.
Yeah, very rude.
You know what? Whatever. I don't respect their undersea Supreme Court ruling.
Under Supreme Court.
The only Supreme I respect is the one that's tomatoes and sour cream. What?
I thought you were going to say Diana Ross.
Oh, well, Miss Ross does deserve her respect.
Yeah.
So Jennifer with a PH and Shining Donut have fallen deeply in love.
Of course.
And
course.
he's holding her in his donut hole
Oh no. Oh no.
in a romantic way, not a sexual way. That was
Wait,
last
is this
week.
part of their culture?
Donuts?
I do like that Shining Donut 911 can seemingly change the type of donut he is at will. Because, like, in previous weeks, he was, like, cream-filled.
A jelly donut.
And now
yeah.
he has
That's
a
his
hole.
power.
I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this. Are all donuts receptive to penetration during sex? Is that how donuts have sex?
We can also transform into a bear claw.
Nice.
Okay, now I'm interested.
Yeah. Paige is
Bear
like,
claws
wait,
are delicious.
wait, put fur on it and I'm in.
Do I get a library?
Yes.
I've been kidnapped by a bear claw and he gave me a donut library.
God, donuts sound good too. I'm just hungry.
I'm hungry too.
Same.
Well, so she's like, I'm in love with you. And he's like, I'm just a donut talking to a woman.
Asking for her to eat me.
I love you as well. And then he like gives her a sprinkle or some shit. So King Triton, king of the mer people, comes to the arena where Isaac, Dave, and Karoon, Amy, and Kate are hanging out. Most Evil Matthew is there. He is just murdered hundreds of mer eggs before they were born.
They're called Megs.
Megs. Exactly.
I'm conflicted because I believe in the mer people's right to choose. So I mean, were they choosing for evil Matthew to do this? Because if so,
No, he did it because he's evil, because he's a dick.
Yeah.
okay.
And then so Triton comes down and he's like, hey, you don't have to fight anymore. 2 of your people are carrying to term hundreds of Megs.
Right.
And everyone looks very confused and starts...
What's confusing about that?
Because they don't know which 2 have done it.
Oh, so they're like looking around like, are you the pregnant man? Are you the pregnant man? I don't know. There's 2 of us.
Mama told me not to. I'm full of mer eggs, misbehaving.
Love it. I do think Uncle Baby Billy would carry those mer eggs to term.
And then leave them.
Well, he would definitely leave them.
Daniel and Aaron, after their Mun orgy, come out and they're like, King Triton, our ally. And he's like, we got to figure this out. They came down to cure their friend. And he's like, yo, their friend is cured and pregnant. They're like, oh my God.
That happened so fast. By the way, do you have any Vaseline? Our butt cheeks are chapped from the orgy.
Oh, jeez.
I've been sitting on that joke since last week.
Oh my God. And then Driscoll is talking to Joey, Sneaky Snake, and Nathan, and he is like, we got to get the fuck out of here. This is stupid.
That's right. They're the ones that are self-aware. They know how stupid the patriarchals are. Yeah.
He's like, Atlantis is fucking stupid. I've known it for a long time because the Illuminati knew about Atlantis, and we were like, what can we do? And we're like, it's real dumb here. It's like Monty Python levels of dumb over here.
Love it.
We have a nuke back in our sub. Let's nuke the fuck out of Atlantis.
Oh, they're going to nuke Atlantis because they have a minister of silly swims?
Minister of laugh strokes.
Unfortunately, Minister Laughstrokes was the vote that led the Supreme Court on to get rid of the right to choose and make them caviar.
I don't like
Anyway, but Dave overhears. And so Driscoll fucking grabs Dave and tears his throat out. He bleeds to death.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, jeez.
That happened quick.
But Captain Brother saw that happen and overheard. And he's running to the arena to warn everybody. And that's the end of the episode.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait till next week to see if they do end up nuking Atlantis on another episode of The Patreonicals.
That's going to be it for us, you guys. I'm Paige.
I'm Mikey.
And I'm your horror virgin, Todd.
Keep it ooky spooky.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Stay on the porch.
Big dog nerds.